Hello, everybody. Do you have an idea for a true crime podcast? I publish true crime podcasts at my YouTube channel, Leader One Studios. I currently have 23,000 subscribers who are always looking for new true crime podcasts to listen to. This is an opportunity to build an audience quickly. If you're interested in joining the Leader One Podcast Network, send an email to morgansvariety@gmail.com and we can discuss the details. Hello, everybody. Gratitude to everybody for listening, and additional heaps of gratitude to everybody who donates to the Patreon account. You keep the show going with your donations. As I keep the expenses paid, the more content I can create. You can donate at www.patreon.com/leader1. Or, if you'd like to make a one-time donation, you can send one through PayPal at morganrector331@hotmail.com. Remember, there is no minimum donation, no maximum donation. If $1 a month is all you feel like you can manage, especially in these difficult times, it's still appreciated. Thank you for everything and enjoy the show. Welcome to Human Monsters. Anna Ruston had just met a friendly taxi driver named Malik. He said, "Would you like to come and meet my family? My mother likes having visitors. She would love to meet a nice English girl like you." Malik seemed nice, and Anna didn't have anything on her agenda at the time. Still, she hesitated. She looked over to where her friend Val was talking on a payphone. She couldn't bring herself to interrupt her. Malik persisted. "It's time for my break. I can drive you there now to say hello. We needn't be away long. Come on, just a cup of tea with my mum." Anna finally said, "Okay." She figured the visit to Malik's home would be so brief, Val wouldn't even notice her absence. Malik took her to his taxi and opened the front passenger door for her. Anna said, "Where does your mom live?" She felt uncertain about the whole thing. She didn't want to be away for long. Malik said, "Not far, just a few streets away." As the taxi passed through the streets, Anna reflected on her life. She lived with her great-grandmother until she was 10 years old. Her great-grandmother died that year. Since then, she really didn't have a home. Her mother rejected her, and she was abused by her father. She ran away to escape the abuse. She felt lonely and unloved. Val was kind enough to let her sleep on her sofa. Val was kind to her, but Anna hadn't truly been loved for many years. Malik's voice cut in. "How was school today?" She said, "All right." "Malik, what lessons did you have?" Anna, "Lots of lessons, mostly boring ones. Art was good." Malik, "Is art your favorite subject?" Anna, "Not usually, but it was good today." Malik, "So what subject do you like best?" Anna, Anna wasn't used to anybody taking an interest in what was happening in her life. She was touched that Malik seemed to be genuinely interested in her. She craved attention and affection, so it felt good to her. Anna, "I like gym and dance." Malik, "I can see you have a good body for dancing. In Pakistan, we love dancing. The women do some beautiful dances. Maybe my sister could teach you to dance the Sami." Anna, "Maybe. Are we nearly there?" Malik, "Yes, only 2 more minutes." 2 more minutes later, Malik pulled into the driveway of a large, semi-detached house. Malik, here we are. Anna, it's a big house. Malik, yes, it's 2 houses made into one. Anna, do you live here too? Malik, yes, nearly all my family lives here. My mom, some of my brothers, their wives and children, and my sister and her family too. Anna, wow. Malik, come on. Malik ushered her to the front door. Malik, take your shoes off. Anna, why? Malik, because we always take our shoes off when we go inside the house. Anna, what for? Malik, to keep it clean, and because that's our way. Malik removed his shoes. Malik, come and meet the family. Malik led her into the living room. Most of his relatives were watching a Pakistani film on a small television. Malik, come and sit down. Malik led her to what the British call a settee. It would be more commonly called a daybed in North America. Some of Malik's female relatives stood to make space for Anna to sit. An elderly woman continued to sit. She smiled at Anna. Malik, this is my mother, Farhat Aziz. To Farhat. Anna. Anna to Farhat. Hello. Anna sat next to Malik. Malik turned toward the other males. Malik, and these are my brothers. The men looked over and smiled at Anna, seeming to be pleased to see her. A woman came in bearing a tray. Malik, this is Muniza. She is my brother Khalid's first wife. Anna smiled as the woman gave her a cup of tea. Malik, to Muniza, get some chapatis. Malik issued this directive with a stern expression. He wasn't playing around. It startled Anna. She began to wonder if she made a mistake in going there. Malik smiled at her reassuringly. Malik, I expect you're hungry. Anna, yes. Muniza brought them homemade chapatis. She ate with the rest of the family. They laughed when she grimaced at the powerful spices that were added to a meat course. After eating, Malik's mother spoke to Anna. Anna couldn't understand anything she'd said. The smile dropped from Farhat's face and was replaced with a look of contempt. At one point, Anna told Malik she needed to use the bathroom. He summoned Muniza and ordered her in Punjabi to accompany Anna to the bathroom. When Anna was finished in the bathroom, Muniza and another woman were standing there, mop in hand. They were also armed with bleach and other cleaning products. They rushed into the bathroom and cleaned it in a frenzy. Not a custom Anna was used to. When Anna returned to the living room, she said to Malik, "Can we go now?" He said, "Soon." She sat down next to Malik. He was talking to his brothers in Punjabi. They kept looking at her and smiling. Though she couldn't understand a word of what they were saying, it was obvious they were talking about her. Anna watched the clock, anxious to leave. Malik, what's wrong with you? Anna, it's getting late. I'd like to go now. Malik, not yet. Malik resumed his discussion with his brother Eshrat. Anna, please, will you take me home? A few minutes later, Anna said to Malik, don't you have to get back to work? Malik put his arm around Anna's shoulders. Anna was caught off guard, though she was happy to be accepted and liked. Malik, no, you stay here. Stay the night with us. It's late, and you look tired. I'm sure you will sleep well here. I have to go back to work now, but I will take you straight home in the morning. Anna, well, all right. Malik checked all the locks to see if they were secure and left out the front door. Anna was left alone in a room full of strangers, and it was awkward. She didn't know what they were doing and what she should do. It was an entirely different culture, after all. Malik's mother began talking to her again, but Anna couldn't understand her that time either. Anna just smiled politely. Just then, 2 children ran into the room. When they saw Anna, they stopped in their tracks and pointed at her. They shouted, "Gori! Gori!" Gori is Punjabi for a Caucasian girl, or some other girl with a fair complexion. None of their relatives shushed them, and that was a point at which Anna began to feel uneasy in their midst. Soon the family put Anna out of their minds as they made preparations for sleep. They were scattered, turning out the lights throughout the house. At one point, Anna said, "What about me?" One woman, Malik's sister, Bushra, gave her a warm smile and led her upstairs to an open door. In broken English, she said, "You sleep." Anna didn't have better options. Her father might abuse her physically and sexually, which he had done so often in the past. That was why she ran away. She couldn't go to her mother's house. Her mother told Anna that she hated her and proved it to her whenever she could. Sometimes her mother's boyfriends conveyed to Anna just how unwelcome she was. She tucked herself in and went to sleep. In the morning, Anna could hear the sounds of all the relatives milling about, having breakfast and preparing for their day. At one point, Malik went upstairs to collect Anna. She was relieved. She was looking forward to leaving the house. He took her to the living room to sit on one of the settees. The family's women were cooking in the kitchen. Anna thought to herself, "Okay, I'm going to have breakfast before we leave." They gave her a cup of tea that was sweetened so heavily it nearly made her nauseous, but she drank it anyway, fearing that to do otherwise would offend them. The flavor of the tea lingered. She turned to Malik and smiled at him in hopes they would depart at last. He ignored her. Finally, Anna said, "Can you take me home now, please?" Something came over Malik. Something dark, menacing. The Malik she met was gone. There was a nefarious look in his eyes. This was an evil man. He uttered to her one of the most chilling and pivotal remarks she would ever hear from another human being. "You're not going home. You're not going anywhere. You're mine now." Only a few days passed since her 15th birthday, though she wouldn't have been prepared for this at any age. But it was something she couldn't process in her mid-teens. She thought, "What does he mean? I'm not going home? What can I do now?" Repeating himself, Malik said, "You're mine." He grabbed her arm and yanked her up. She said, "Ow, you're hurting me." She thought, "Why is he being so rough?" He said, "I'll show you where you're going." He dragged her up the stairs, pushing her forward up the first few. He grabbed her hair and dragged her along the rest of the steps. He brought her to the entrance of the bedroom in which she slept and said, "That's the only place you're going." He shoved her into the bedroom and she fell to the floor. He said, "Don't say a word. Don't look out of that window." There was a window overlooking the street with a curtain drawn. He said, "Don't go near it. I will know if you've even touched the curtains. Just sit on that bed and don't move." He turned and left the room. He slammed the door and locked it. Now Anna not only had no other place to go, but she couldn't escape Malik's house. She was terrified of what consequences might befall her if she escaped out the front window. She sat on the edge of the bed and cried. She was still startled and stunned by the look that came over his face. The raging evil was shocking to behold. There was nothing in the room with which to entertain and distract herself. She was left alone with her fear and suffering. None of the house's inhabitants visited her. Nobody gave her food or drink. Eventually this became unbearable, and she began to panic. She started banging on the door, harder as she went along. She began to shout, "Let me out! I need the toilet!" Nobody came to the door. The only response she detected was the sound of angry voices leaking upwards from downstairs. The women were shouting at her in Punjabi. Though she couldn't make sense of it, it sounded like they were cursing at her. Given no alternative, Anna walked over to a corner and urinated on the floor. She felt ashamed, but she couldn't hold it any longer. Malik returned late that afternoon. He stomped up the stairs to her room. He opened the door, and then closed it immediately after, and locked it again. He said, "My back hurts." He put something on the floor and took his shirt off. He said, "Massage it for me." He lay down in the prone position. Anna hesitated. Malik said, "Come on, massage my back." Anna was too scared to refuse. She applied techniques she had seen in a movie. She was repulsed by his sweaty body. She rubbed his neck and shoulders. He said, "No, you stupid bitch. I said my back." She was trembling. She passed her hands down his back to his waist. He said, "Yes, there." She continued to massage him. Without warning, he turned over, almost sending Anna falling to the floor. He picked something up from the floor and stood over her. The object was a stiff bottle brush with metallic bristles. He said to her, "You're a dirty fucking bitch. You're a filthy white slut, and I'm going to clean you so you can be mine." A creepy smile appeared on his face. He derived a sadistic satisfaction from what he was about to do. She thought, "What does he mean? How am I dirty? Why the bottle brush? Malik, how many fucking filthy Englishmen have you been with?" Anna, "I haven't." Malik, "Don't lie to me. All English girls are slags. White slags. I need to cleanse you." Smiling maniacally now, he pushed her down to the bed. He yanked her pants off, removed her panties, and pried her legs apart. He pushed the coarsely bristled brush inside her vagina. The bristles were so incisive they tore her skin apart. He raped her with the brush, pushing it in and out, up and down, around and around. It was so excruciatingly painful, she screamed. Malik, "Shut the fuck up." Anna, "Stop! Please stop!" Malik, "You're enjoying this, aren't you? This is an Englishman inside you." The pain was so intense, Anna couldn't concentrate on anything else. Finally, with one last jerking motion, he pulled the brush out from within her. It was so painful she nearly fainted. Malik, "You're mine now. You'll do what I say." Anna was in shock. Malik, "Won't you?" He held the brush threateningly close to her. His eyes lit up at the sight of blood seeping out of her vagina. Anna was sobbing now. Desperate to avoid being violated again, she said, "Yes." Malik said, "Turn over, white bitch." He stood back to get a better view of her agony. He pushed her downward so that she would lay in the prone position. She kept her eyes facing forward. Seeing him would only make it feel worse. Malik brought the brush toward her buttocks. Anna screamed, "No, please don't." Malik raped her with the brush in her anal cavity. As he shoved it in and out, shock waves of pain reverberated through her. The more she cried out, the more aggressive he became, blasting her with the sharp metal bristles. He put his hand over her mouth and nose to stifle her screams. She struggled to breathe. After a few minutes of this, he split her rectum and she bled profusely. With this, it appeared that Malik had finally achieved satisfaction. He put on his shirt, retrieved the brush, and left the room. He locked the door. Anna crawled over to the corner close to the window, leaving a trail of blood behind her. She thought, "Why did I agree to come here? What have I done to deserve this? Hours later, Anna was rocking back and forth. She was so traumatized from what Malik had done to her. At dusk, she heard footsteps approaching from downstairs. She heard the key unlock the door, and it opened slowly. She was relieved to see that it wasn't Malik this time. It was one of the women. She came bearing a mug. Her name was Saraya, wife of Eshrat. She was stern. She put the mug on a chest of drawers adjacent to the bed. She left the room and locked the door behind her. She locked a door at the bottom of the stairs, another measure that would ensure Anna could not escape. Anna hadn't had sustenance in any form since the previous day, and she was famished. She was also parched after crying for hours. She anticipated there would be tea or some other kind of beverage familiar to her. Instead, it was some kind of murky liquid with particles of some kind floating on the top. Such a drink may have been Bill Cosby's idea of a refreshment, but it was too suspicious for her. She dipped her finger in and wet her lips with the fluid. Following this, Anna just sat in a daze for hours, crying silently. If they heard her cry, Malik would just return with more tortures. She had to use the toilet and banged on the door again, but she just got the usual response of Malik's angry co-conspirators cursing in Punjabi. A few minutes later, Saraya brought in a glass of water and left immediately after. The glass was eventually used as a receptacle in which Anna would urinate. She searched her mind desperately to figure out a strategy to have a bowel movement free of Malik's detection. Not wanting to enrage him with the smell, she searched the furniture in the room until she found an old handbag in a wardrobe. She relieved herself in the bag and put it back where she found it. Malik returned in the evening. It was clear that he was full of rage, and she could feel his heavy footfalls on the stairs as he made his way toward her room. After unlocking the door, he stormed in, slamming the door behind him and locking it. He was so full of anger he was grinding his teeth. He lunged toward her, grabbing her hair and lifting her up to a standing position. He rammed her against the wall head first. He said, "You ever tell anybody about this? You ever look out of that window? And your head's going to go through this wall." He tightened his pull on her hair, pulled her head back a few inches, and pounded it against the wall repeatedly. By the time he stopped, she was disoriented. He let her go and she fell to the floor in a daze. She felt like her head would explode. As he made his way to the door, she looked back at the wall against which he had been slamming her head. Blood was trickling down the wall toward the floor. She put her hand on her scalp. There was blood in her hair. When Malik saw she was bleeding, he smiled from ear to ear. "Malik, you're my property now, and you'll do as I say. Whatever I say, you do, or else you know what the consequences will be, don't you?" Anna nodded. "Malik, don't you?" He pulled her head up by her hair. He put his hideous face within an inch of hers. Anna said, "Yes." "Malik, good. You'd better believe it." Anna, "Would you kill me?" Malik, "Well, you just try me." That was when Anna knew her life was in serious jeopardy. She began to cry uncontrollably. She tried to keep it silent, but at one point it blurted out. He backhanded her in the face. He said, "Shut up, you're bleeding. You're a weak white slag with nothing to cry about. Nobody wants you. Nobody misses you. You're lucky I've taken you in, and now I'm looking after you, so I don't want any of your white trash emotion." Anna nodded and stifled her weeping. "Malik, all you have to do is whatever I say, and you'll be all right." Malik pulled her aggressively from the floor and perched her on the edge of the bed. "Malik, now do it." He unfastened his pants. "Anna, Do what? She truly didn't know what he wanted. Malik, do what all you white slags do. He grabbed her hair forcefully and pushed her head down to his crotch. He pushed his diminutive penis inside her mouth and held her in place until he ejaculated at her throat. It triggered her gag reflex, and she vomited all over him. He backhanded her in the face several times. He forced her to perform oral sex on him several more times. At one point, Anna had a moment of rest. She reclined back to recover. With a big stupid grin on his face, Malik put his hand in his pocket and took out a disposable razor. He brandished it in her direction with every intention of instilling fear in her. It had the intended effect, and she was trembling. Anna tried to pull across the bed as far away from him as she could, but he pinned her down by placing his full weight on her legs. He pulled up her skirt and pulled her panties down around her thighs. She screamed, "Don't hurt me! Please don't hurt me!" He said, "Look at all that dirty hair. Pubic hair is very dirty. I have to make you clean." He advanced toward her vagina. He enjoyed the process of shaving her pubic hair. He shaved with ever harder strokes as he drew near her clitoris. He drew the blade aggressively across her clitoris several times. He punctured the skin of her clitoris until he drew blood. The more she winced and screamed from the pain, the more delighted Malik became. Once he was finished shaving her, he raped her brutally, making sure to maximize the pain as much as possible. The damage he did to her vagina with the bottle brush and the razor had not had time to heal, and so the agony for her was unendurable. Blood ran down her legs as he defiled her. He put his hand over her mouth and nose so tightly she could barely breathe. It appealed greatly to his sadistic tendencies. Meanwhile, a flashback was triggered. She was raped for the first time at the age of 11 by Val's ex-husband, and this reminded her of that event. "Malik, you've been with different men, you white slag. I have to punish you. I'll make sure you never do that again. Anna, I've not been with anybody. I'm only 15 years old. Malik, 15-year-olds are the worst slags. I know English girls. I'm a taxi driver." Having finished with her, she pulled herself up to a sitting position. Malik pushed her back down and climbed on top of her for another round of rape. He made sure to thrust as aggressively as possible to cause her as much pain as he could. He muffled her mouth and nose again. "Malik, I'm going to make you suffer for what you've done." "Anna, I've done nothing." "Malik, I know you've been with other taxi drivers, so it's for your own good. I have to punish you." Mercifully, he was unable to continue any further, as he was spent. "Malik, I own you now. You'll never be anybody else's. You're mine." With that, he reclined on the bed. He turned over and went to sleep. Anna moved as far away from him as she could. Not only was she repulsed by him because of his unattractive appearance and by his status as her rapist and tormentor, but he stank to high heaven. She hadn't been allowed to shower or wash her nether regions since she arrived, but he reeked enough to knock a buzzard off a shit wagon. Raw sewage would recalibrate and morph into humanoid shapes to flee from Malik's toxic stench. Even shit itself wore a gas mask in his presence. A skunk wouldn't occupy the same area code as Malik. As that piece of shit slept and stank, Anna was reeling from the pain that burned in her genitalia. She thought, "Will I be permanently damaged? Is it possible for me to survive this ordeal and stay sane? How?" She did her best to dissociate from the physical pain, but it was impossible. To make matters worse, she began to wonder if she was to blame. She wondered if she had truly done something to deserve those tortures. She thought, "What can I do? Is there any way to escape from this monster? To rescue my body and my sanity? Anna was so broken down she wet the bed that night, the first time since she was a little girl. It made all her suffering feel even worse. This was a hell on earth. She hoped that now that he had satisfied himself, he would let her go, having gotten what he wanted. That was unlikely, since he made it explicitly clear that she was his property. In the morning, Malik was angry and said something to her in Punjabi because he was so stupid he forgot that she was a white English girl and therefore only fluent in English. There was something about his countenance that suggested he was so irate he was about to inflict another round of torture on her. She began to tremble again. When he got dressed and headed for the door, he saw a barrel in the room. He turned to look at her. Anna, what is that barrel for? Malik, that's what you get to piss in. Anna, why do I got to wee in the barrel? Why can't I go to the toilet? Malik, because you're a dirty fucking bitch. He looked upon Anna with disgust. Malik, I don't want you using my toilet. You're dirty. He smacked Anna in the head. She already had a headache, so it hurt beyond Malik's wildest dreams. He pulled her out of the bed by her hair and pushed her to the floor. Malik, that's what you get for asking stupid questions. He left the room. Anna replaced the sheets after he left and went back to sleep. It was the only way she could escape the nightmare in which she was living. Anna woke to the sound of the key turning in the lock. It was Muniza. She was a sad-looking woman. She looked defeated. She was about 10 years older than Anna, so this existed firmly within the realm of possibility. Anna thought, perhaps a kindred spirit. Maybe she understands. Muniza said, tea. She placed a cup of tea and a chapati on a plate on the chest of drawers. Anna thanked her. It was 36 hours since she'd last had something to eat, and she was starving and thirsty. When Muniza was about to turn toward the door, she shook her arm. A small white packet fell from her sleeve onto the rug. It didn't look familiar to Anna, but it looked like Muniza did it on purpose. She hesitated for a moment, as if someone was watching her. As the door stood open, Anna wondered if escape was possible. Just then, Ashrat entered the room and shouted an order at Muniza. Whatever it consisted of, he was very hostile about it. Muniza fled the room and locked the door. When Anna picked up the packet, she found 4 foil strips containing tablets within. There was one English word on the packet, paracetamol. It is a painkiller, and Anna was in need of its use as such. Anna was overwhelmed by this one act of kindness amid all the horrific tortures to which Malik subjected her. It occurred to her that Muniza must have known much more than she dared to reveal. Anna took the tablets with the beverage Muniza brought her. Afterwards, Anna went over to her favorite corner and rocked back and forth compulsively. Thoughts raced through her mind as she did so. Thoughts like, what is happening to me? Why hasn't anybody come and found me? But who is there to find me? The rocking comforted her somewhat. She mothered herself as the only person in the world who felt any compassion for her. It was what her mother failed to do, and it was never more necessary. After a day full of intermittent sleep interspersed with boredom, dread, sadness, and fear, Anna was woken by the sound of Malik unlocking the door and entering the room. He headed toward the bed and grabbed Anna by the hair. He pulled her off the bed and through the doorway. She couldn't keep up with him because she was in so much pain from the beatings and the rape. He pushed her across the landing by the stairs. He said, I want eggs on toast. Anna was unable to walk down the stairs. Holding onto the railing firmly, she slid her way down, careful to avoid bending her legs. Even so, Every footfall triggered blinding pain in her vaginal and anal regions. Malik brought her to the kitchen. He retrieved the eggs and bread and then disappeared into the living room. A few minutes later, the toast and eggs were nearly done. Malik came back into the kitchen and said, "Is it ready yet?" She said yes. She served him the meal on a plate. Malik ate the toast and eggs on the bed in Anna's room, while she had to sit there and watch him. It was impossible to find a comfortable way to sit in the aftermath of her injuries. She shifted around. Malik said, "Stop fidgeting. Move over." Anna tried to sit still, but she couldn't put a stop to her trembling. Troubling thoughts trickled in. Would he attack me again tonight? Surely he couldn't inflict another onslaught so soon. After Malik finished eating, he turned to look at Anna. He saw that she was still shaking. He said, "So, white slag, you're frightened of me, are you?" He laughed about this. Anna tried to slide as far away from him as possible, but it didn't do much good. Malik said, "Come here and do it." He pulled her across the bed by her arm. He rammed his penis into her mouth. She gagged and retched as he pressed it against her throat. He fucked her throat as she fought the urge to vomit. Once it was over, he lay on the bed, panting. Anna thought for a moment that he was finished for the day. Not quite. He shouted, "Come on, you white bitch." He tore her clothes off. He grabbed her vagina and squeezed it with maximum force to make it hurt. He scraped his jagged fingernails across her clitoris, which punctured the scabs it acquired as it healed, and now it was bleeding again. Anna cried out. Malik said, "Shut your mouth." He punched her in the face. He climbed on top of her. He was so heavy she struggled to breathe under his weight. She turned her head to the side to avoid smelling his foul stench. Her nose was bleeding from when he punched her. The sight of her bleeding catalyzed him into overdrive, and he raped her with aggression and speed. He muffled her mouth and nose as before, and it became even harder for her to breathe. The more he brushed against her open wounds, the more she cried out, and it just goaded him into more hate-fucking, and his ecstasy was escalated as Anna's agony was augmented. Rape is a bridge between the egregious and the erotic, and while the perpetrator may never pay a toll, the affliction to the victim is one from which they may never recover. When Malik was done with her, he rolled over onto the mattress. Anna desperately gulped air back into her lungs. He soon fell asleep. Anna slept as close to the wall as she could, anxious to avoid waking him. She wept as she thought, "How could I bear this torture? Surely it would end soon." She wanted to take the painkillers, but they resided on the other side of the room, and she didn't want to risk waking Malik. Not only was there a raging inferno of unbearable pain, stinging, throbbing pain between her legs, but her nose may also have been broken. To provide some solace to herself, she closed her eyes and visualized herself in the presence of her great-grandmother. She recited a prayer she taught her. "In my little bed I lie. Heavenly Father, hear my cry. Lord, protect me through the night, and bring me safe to morning light. Amen." She had never needed that comfort, support, and affection more than during her term in Malik's hoary underworld. This pious Muslim man fashioned himself into the purest manifestation of satanic hypocrisy, and somehow he was incognizant of the discrepancy. The next day, Anna was alone for several hours. The boredom was grueling, with no options to occupy her mind. But it was better than being raped, beaten, and mutilated by Malik. So she retreated into her imagination, where she could find an oasis in this uncaring desert, where empathy was regarded as a weed and was uprooted upon detection. At one point, Anna heard the lock, and in went Malik's mother. She was angry and cursed at Anna in Punjabi. She raised her fist and gestured at Anna as a prompt to get her to follow her. Anna was confused. Malik made it abundantly clear that she was not to leave the bedroom. It was unclear who was in control at the time, so Anna followed his mother downstairs, careful not to step with a heavy stride to avoid triggering the pain. When they arrived in the hallway, Malik's mother cursed at her again. Anna would find out much later that she was calling her an English slut, and that she was just a chippy who was fornicating with her son. She made no mention of him being a pedophilic rapist and kidnapper. These didn't register as moral transgressions in her mind. In their culture, the woman is always to blame for rape, even with evidence of her refusal. She took Anna to the living room and made her sit on the least comfortable settee. She brought her a cup of weak tea. She queued up some shitty Pakistani film on the television. Naturally, Anna didn't understand a single word of the dialogue, and the production value was along the lines of what you might see in a Bollywood film, so the entertainment value was minuscule for her at best. Still, it was more amusing than staring at the dust particles in the shafts of sunlight that penetrated the curtains in her room while dreading the eventual return of Malik. Malik's mother didn't like Anna, but she seemed to feel compelled to show her some half-assed hospitality. At noon, the air was infused with the stench of curry. One of the younger women brought Anna 2 chapatis and a bowl of curry. Anna didn't care for the curry, but she didn't want to risk angering Malik's family further, so she had a small spoonful of the curry with the chapatis. She wasn't very hungry, so after eating a few bites, she drank the glass of water she was given. Once the movie of dubious entertainment value ended, Eshrat sat on the settee opposite Anna. He was more fluent in English than most of the family. The best efforts of the women of the family yielded sentence fragments. Eshrat bombarded her with questions. Where do you come from? How old are you? Where do you live? What is your mother's name? What is your father's name? How long have you been going down to the taxi base? How do you know Val? What do you like doing? His inquiries were tiresome, and he gave her little time to answer every question. But he was friendly toward her, unlike the rest of the family, and it was a welcome relief after Malik's cold-blooded hostility and sexual violence. It occurred to Anna that he might even protect her against Malik. She was a runaway, but she wasn't so cynical and jaded after her time on the streets that she couldn't anticipate the best of people. Eshrat's wife, Soraya, came into the room. As with every other member of the family who wasn't Malik, Anna searched their eyes for a glimmer of recognition of the same moral code that acknowledges that what Malik was doing to Anna was wrong. She never caught sight of that glimmer among his clan. As a matter of fact, in time, Anna would learn that some of the men in the family had not only had sex with minors, but many of them were much younger than Anna, primarily their own nephews and nieces. This was a sick bunch. Anna was dying to ask Eshrat and Soraya when she was going home, but she knew the outcome would likely lead to more torture from Malik. She just asked when he would be returning. Eshrat: I don't know. He is here, there, and everywhere. Anna: what time will he be back? Eshrat: why are you asking? Why do you need to know? Anna: because I want to go home. Eshrat snarled at her, saying, This is your home now. Anna thought, I'll never get out of here. I'm stuck in this hell forever. In the downtime before Malik's arrival, Soraya taught Anna how to make pakoras. Anna noticed bruises on Soraya's arms. She felt sorry for her, but didn't dare comment on it openly, for fear that the conversation might make its way back to Malik. She also noticed that Muniza occupied a position among the lowest echelons of the family's hierarchy, possibly just one rung above the children. Even the women cursed and barked orders at her. The front door opened and Malik walked in. With no acknowledgement of anybody else, he grabbed Anna by her hair and pushed her up the stairs so aggressively she stumbled. When she did, he would kick and swear at her. When they arrived at the bedroom, he threw her. She landed on the bed, but she hit her shoulder on the wall and landed on the floor. Malik slammed the door and locked it. He left her alone, much to her relief. Anna retreated to her favorite corner, nursing the shoulder where a bruise was emerging. She closed her eyes and summoned thoughts and memories of her great-grandmother. How she yearned for her love. If she had been alive, this never would have happened. If it had, and she knew where Malik lived, he would have had hell to pay. This was one of the most painful aspects of this situation for her, that a rescue could only happen in her fantasies. She daydreamed herself into a world where she was respected, and her boundaries and rights were honored and negotiated in an appropriate fashion. There were serial killers in prison who lived more dignified lives. Her innocence attracted a man who was incapable of feeling remorse and seeing the error in his transgressive actions. He saw himself not as cruel, but as righteous. This is how Islam defines rape. Forcible illegal sexual intercourse by a man with a woman who is not legally married to him without her free will. Pakistan is one among many Islamic theocracies that not only concurs with this definition legally, but has embedded it in its criminal code. The most common punishment in a country like Pakistan is 100 lashings, or a stoning if the perpetrator is married. Some Islamic scholars have written that if the victim was abducted forcefully from her home or some other place than her home, and that includes with the threat of violence using a weapon, the offense would be punishable with a more severe consequence. A verse from the Quran spells it out more explicitly. The reward of those who wage war against Allah and His Messenger and strive to create disorder in the land is only this, that they be slain or crucified, or their hands and their feet be cut off on alternate sides, or they be expelled from the land. Just a few examples that verify Malik's status as a hypocrite, whose transgressions against Anna were neither justified by Islamic or Western morality. One night Malik stormed into the room. Anna was in her corner. Seeing her cowered into that part of the room pleased him. Her fear was his fetish. He said, "Come here." When she approached him, he slapped her hard at the back of her head. She fell on the bed. He grabbed her hair and pulled her up. He spread her legs and pulled her panties off. She tried to cover herself, but he smacked her hand away. Suddenly Malik, the hypocritical Muslim, didn't believe in modesty. Like the creep and scumbag that he is, he leered at her vagina. He worked himself into a frenzy of lust. He threw her to the bed and raped her. It was more vicious than ever. It felt like he was tearing her apart. She screamed and cried all the while, and while she withered from the agony, it excited him to all new heights. When he finished, he collapsed on the bed next to her with a big smile on his face. It looked like someone sculpted his smile out of feces. Anna's experience of the rest of the night included full body pain and bruises up and down her epidermis. She struggled to dissociate her way back into the nebulous realm between imagination and the afterworld, where she hoped her great-grandmother might be watching and find some way to manipulate the forces of good among the corporeal entities of the material world to liberate Anna. She so badly wanted to believe that unchecked evil could not be indefinitely sustainable. The next day, Eshrot came in the room. He wasn't nearly as friendly as he was during his inquisition. He notified Anna that she was going to undergo more cooking lessons from the household's women. Taking the stairs as gingerly as possible to avoid triggering more pain, Eshrot snarled, "Hurry up, you white bitch. There is nothing wrong with you." When Anna arrived on the first floor, she caught a glimpse of herself in a mirror. She was shocked by what she saw. The girl looking back at her was pallid, like she had woken in a mausoleum, ready to resume her life as a mortal. She had a black eye that was completely closed. There was other bruising and swelling on the left side of her face. One long bruise on the right side of her face extended from her chin down her neck. Her injuries were so extensive that even her gums and the roots of her hair were sore. While the women taught Anna how to prepare some Pakistani dishes, Soraya let her hijab slip. Whether it was accidental or not, Anna could see a large bruise on her neck. It looked like she had been strangled. She repositioned the hijab. She gave Anna a sympathetic look, implying she knew what was happening to her and empathized. Empathy is not an exit strategy, so while it was comforting, it was not something Anna could exploit to flee from Malik's tortures. Soraya and Muniza acknowledged, mostly through surreptitious glances, that they were victims too, and acknowledged their common ground, even if they weren't suffering to the same degree as Anna. In the subsequent weeks, the rapes and beatings Malik inflicted on Anna became routine, though never less traumatic. Her entire life was pain and distress, suffering as a lifestyle. She became increasingly depressed and mentally unstable. Malik was breaking her down. Every day she felt like she couldn't bear another second of it, but she also knew she had no choice but to accept the tortures. 2 or 3 months had passed since her cooking lesson with Soraya, and she hadn't been let out of the bedroom since then. As before, her only escape was sleep, and she had become semi-narcoleptic by then. She lost track of time, as she had no means of keeping track of the day, month, or year. When she wasn't asleep, she would retreat into her imagination as she nursed her latest wounds. The only other people she saw besides Malik were Soraya, who delivered her food, and Muniza, who was assigned the revolting task of emptying the contents of Anna's latrine every day. Speaking of the women, one day they brought her down to the bathroom. They dyed Anna's blonde hair black. Anna looked at herself in the mirror afterwards. She looked like a vampire, pale with jet black hair. Anna suddenly felt lightheaded. She also felt like she was involuntarily wetting herself. She pointed to the toilet and headed in its direction. The women stood around her as she sat. Suddenly, clumps of lumpy blood landed in the toilet water. The women were shocked. Anna passed out. When Anna came to, she was lying on the floor of the bathroom. She was surrounded by a pool of blood. Anna hadn't had periods before then, so she wasn't sure if it was a menstrual issue. Muniza cleaned the mess where she could. She said to the women, "Hospital." They shook their heads. Malik arrived just then, and Bushra brought him into the bathroom. Anna said to him, "I don't feel well. I've lost a lot of blood." Malik took this in with a grin. He always got a kick out of the visage of Anna's blood and suffering. Anna said, "Please take me to the hospital." Malik was enraged by this suggestion. "No, you don't need any fucking hospital. You just need to lie down. I'll take you upstairs." Malik carried her upstairs and placed her on the bed. He was surprisingly gentle. He looked fired up, like he wanted to rape her. But there are Islamic beliefs regarding what is considered to be the impurity of menstrual blood, so this is possibly why he left her alone that day. When Muslims assemble in a mosque for Sadat, or their daily prayer, the congregation is trisectional, with males in front, females in the middle, and menstruating women and girls in the very back. During a Muslim woman's period, she is considered by other Muslims to be unclean and is to be avoided at all costs. The next day, Malik and Eshrat went up to Anna's room and gave her a glass of some kind of murky-looking fluid. Malik said, "You have to drink this. It will be good for you and make you stronger." He helped her sit up so she could drink. The liquid was green and tasted bitter. She said, "It's horrible, so horrible." She gagged. Malik said, "It's herbal medicine from Pakistan. You must drink it up to make you well again." As usual, she was left with no choice but to comply with Malik's orders, so she drank it down. The men left her alone. Anna had cramps for the next few days, and every time she relieved herself into her latrine barrel, she expelled more blood. She began to worry. She didn't know if she had developed some kind of disease or if it was a consequence of being raped so often. One day, Soraya, Bushra, and Muniza dressed Anna in a new outfit of clothing. It was a Pakistani outfit and a long scarf. It was roomy and concealed the curvature of her body, very different from Western clothing. They explained the rules that she, as a woman, was expected to obey. Bushra said, "Head down, scarf down on face." Soraya said, "Eyes down, no look men." Muniza had nothing to contribute. Soraya said, "Come." They brought Anna downstairs where the rest of the family had congregated. There were some people she hadn't seen before. They were Malik's other brothers, as well as their spouses and children. His brother Khalid had married 3 women. He had pretty much discarded Muniza by then. Muniza had a child who was disabled. The entire family blamed Muniza for the child's affliction. The only member of the family who loved and spent time with the child was Muniza. Unconditional love was not a fixture in their lives. The children became boisterous, and Malik's mother spoke to him about it. Malik called for an end to the noise, and the children complied. The doorbell rang, and an elderly man wearing a turban came in. Everybody bowed to him, Anna included. Everybody adjourned to the prayer room at the front of the house. After a lengthy monologue, the old man prompted Anna to join him. Some of the rest of the adults pushed her toward him. Malik stood to his side. The man said something to her in Punjabi, and naturally she didn't understand. He repeated what he said. Malik walked up to her, grabbed her arm tightly, and said, "Say the words after him." She complied. She didn't know what she was saying, but she said it. They went through it one word at a time. She approached Bushra after the ceremony had ended. She said, "What words did I say?" "You say Punjabi words. That's our tradition." "But what did they mean?" "Mean, you Muslim now." "I don't want to be Muslim." Anna began to panic. Bushra said, "You Muslim, not change now." She patted Anna's arm reassuringly. "Muslim good." Anna didn't see it as good. She was horrified. She was worried that she would remain a Muslim forever. As Anna contemplated this and her history with Christianity, Bushra said, "You change name." Anna said, "No, my name is Anna." "You Muslim name, Yasmin." Anna shook her head. When Anna was back in her room, she repeated the following mantra to herself. "My name is Anna. I am a Christian. My name is Anna. I am a Christian. My name is Anna. I am a Christian." Anna recited the Christian prayers that her great-grandmother taught her. She hoped that if she did it enough, it would negate her status as a Muslim. After the conversion ceremony, Anna was permitted to spend time downstairs with the family. She learned more of the Punjabi language and could understand much of what was said about her, none of it flattering. Malik's mother, Farhat, was conniving. She would tell lies to Malik about Anna to get him riled up. She would say things like, "That white slut told Soraya you smell, and she called you a bad English word. You need to beat that slut every day, my son. You must put her in her place." Whenever this sort of thing occurred, Malik would take Anna upstairs to beat her up until she bled, and finish her off with rape. Malik felt that he was doing Anna a favor by keeping her in his house as his captive. He said, "You don't deserve to be here with me. I work my fingers to the bone, driving my taxi at all hours, and you don't even thank me for it. You don't deserve any kindness from me." This is verse 49:6 from the Quran concerning the evils of spreading lies about others and believing gossip. "O you who believe, if a wicked person comes to you with any news, ascertain the truth, lest you harm people unwittingly, and afterwards become full of repentance for what you have done." Lying is considered within the rubric of Islamic morality to be one of the most egregious transgressions. To quote Surah Al-Imran, verse 361, and pray for the curse of Allah on the liars. Farhat hated having Anna around, always referring to her as white trash. One day, while she was in the living room, Anna waited until everybody was out of the room. She grabbed the telephone in a mad dash to contact someone who could intervene and save her from that nightmare. Eshrat grabbed the receiver from her and slammed it on the cradle. He backhanded her on the head so hard she fell and screamed. He cut her eye with a ring he was wearing. He kicked her several times. He shouted, "You whore, you are forbidden to use the phone. If you think I'm cross, just you wait until Malik comes home. I'm calling him now." Sure enough, Eshrat called Malik and ranted in Punjabi. He used the name Yasmin, so Anna knew it was not an idle threat. Anna was still on the floor crying. Eshrat yelled, "Shut up!" Anna said, "You've hurt my eye. I can't see with it." Eshrat shrugged and said, "That's your own stupid fault." He kicked her again. Anna's eye swelled shut. It hurt so much she was worried it was permanently damaged. She said, "Please take me to A&E." A&E is an abbreviation for University Hospital. Anna said, "Please, I don't want to lose my sight." "No way. You should have thought of that sooner." He crouched and pulled her up into a chair. He said, "Malik is on his way home, and he's angry." Anna continued to weep in dread of what was to come. Minutes later, Malik arrived. After Eshrat ranted to him in Punjabi, Malik flew into a rage. He pulled Anna upstairs by her hair and pushed her into the bedroom. He slammed her up against a wall. He said, "I'll show you not to disobey me again." He punched her in varied locations of her body before throwing her on the bed. He raped her, with the act escalating in brutality as he went along. When he finished, he reclined with a grin on his face. Anna was crying. Malik said, "Shut up, you stupid sniveling. My Avi." The meaning of the word Avi is similar to motherfucker. That didn't represent the last of the verbal abuse that day. He said, "You're nothing but a white slut, a whore." She said, "My eye hurts. Eshrat cut my eye with his ring when he slapped my face. I need to go to the hospital." He got off the bed and said, "That was your fault. You should not have been so disobedient. If you can't behave yourself, this is what you get. Now you are forbidden from leaving this room until I say so, and that won't be for a long time. Do you understand?" Anna said yes. "That will teach you. You're nothing but a piece of shit." He stormed out of the room. He slammed the door and locked it. One day Malik entered the bedroom earlier in the day than was customary. He was furious. He said, "What the fucking hell did you tell my mother?" "I didn't tell her anything." "Don't you dare lie to me." He grabbed her hair and dragged her out of her corner. He kicked her legs out from underneath so she was completely under his control. He pulled her upright and brandished a chapati rolling pin threateningly. Anna said, "I'm not lying. Please don't hurt me." This made no impact. He lunged toward her with the rolling pin. He said, "This is for your fucking lies." He cracked her across her back. He said, "And this is for swearing at my mother." He beat Anna about the head with the rolling pin. She fell to the floor, screaming. She curled up and put her hands atop her head to prevent damage to her skull. He pounded her on the head until he was exhausted by the effort. Anna had a splitting headache. She was dizzy and nauseous. Malik got down on the floor and raped her with his usual fury. The next morning, Anna woke to the sight of fresh blood on her eiderdown. Her hands were swollen, stiff, and misshapen. Her head was swollen and tender. Her vision was blurred. There was shooting pain in her skull. Later that day, the unthinkable happened. Anna was a recipient of compassion in Malik's house. When Moniza went in the room to empty the barrel, she got an eyeful of the extent of Anna's injuries, and she was shocked. All the women in the house were savagely beaten, but this was different. She went over and tenderly stroked Anna's cheek. From there, she left the room without locking the door behind her. She went down the stairs, addressing other members of the household in Punjabi. Seconds later, Muniza re-entered the room, followed by Bushra and Soraya. Farhat was trailing behind, but only because she was a busybody who wanted to keep abreast of everybody's business. Bushra assumed leadership. She told Soraya to go downstairs and telephone Malik. She said, "Tell him Yasmin is hurt. Can we take her to hospital?" She turned to Muniza. "Get a bowl of warm water and a cloth, and bring some paracetamols as well." A few minutes later, Muniza gingerly washed the blood from Anna's head. She gave her painkillers and some water. The pills were not strong enough to alleviate the pain that time. Soraya had bad news for Anna. Malik says no hospital. He is coming back. He will call the doctor to come and see you. They sided her clothing and propped her up with extra pillows. Later, Malik brought the doctor into the room. As the doctor examined her, the entire family watched. So much for discretion. He said, "How did this happen?" Malik answered for her. "She's very clumsy. She fell down the stairs." The doctor said, "That would explain the head injuries. But how did you damage your hands so badly?" Malik answered for her again. "She was protecting her head when she fell." The doctor said, I see." Soraya said, "We've sponged her head." The doctor said, "Well, she will need more than that. I will call for an ambulance to take her to hospital. I'm pretty sure she has some broken bones in her hands, and I want them to x-ray her skull as well." Malik objected. "No x-rays needed. She has a phobia about hospitals. My sister is a trained nurse. She will splint Yasmin's fingers and bathe her head. We'll make up a bed for her downstairs in the living room so that we can keep an eye on her and look after her properly." The doctor didn't seem to feel this would suffice. He said, "Well..." Malik said, "Thank you for coming, doctor. I'll show you out." As the doctor left, so did Anna's chance at being rescued. During the subsequent months, the rapes and beatings were not as severe. Malik was working longer hours, so he neither had the time nor the energy to torture her with the same dedication as before. It was mostly during his lunch breaks and the brief period of time before he worked in the family's retail operation when he was most likely to rape and beat her. If he had an entire day off, he would often spend it making Anna's life hell. Sometimes on his days off, he would bring her out of her room and take her downstairs, saying to her all the while something along the lines of, "Come on, you fucking cunt. I want you downstairs." He would take her downstairs and make her sit on the least comfortable settee. It was the one Muniza slept on. He would plant her there and say, "Sit here and don't move." She couldn't go anywhere, not even to the bathroom, without begging for his permission. He loved to make her wait it out as long as possible. 18 months in, Anna found that she was constantly tired and nauseous. It seemed her immune system was shutting down. One day she said to Malik, "Please take me to see a doctor. If you want to keep me alive, let me see a doctor." He said, "Stop being so fucking dramatic." He would beat her for being sick, and his rage fueled his libido, leading to more rape. He didn't spend as much time in the room at this point because she vomited into the barrel so often it stunk up the room. There was a growth inside of Anna's stomach. At first, she wondered if it might be cancer. Eventually, she felt the growth kicking, and it dawned on her that she was pregnant. She was thrilled there would at least be one person in the house she could love, and who would love her in return. She was uncertain of how Malik and his family would react, so she kept the pregnancy to herself. It was the one point of light in the pit of darkness in which she dwelled. Malik continued to rape and beat her. She would put her hands up above her stomach to protect the fetus. As a consequence, he inflicted injuries to other parts of her body, like her arms and back. He still liked to make it hurt. He still liked to watch her bleed. He still liked to cover her face and deny her oxygen. One day Anna dissociated herself during a rape, and Malik picked up on it. He grabbed her arm and held it up behind her back, close to her neck. He twisted it until it snapped. She screamed from the pain. Malik said, "That will teach you, white whore. Now you can feel my anger, can't you? You are mine. You do what I say. Don't forget that." He concluded by storming out of the room. Anna feared that the pain would afflict the baby too. Later, Anna was still crying aloud from the excruciating pain. Malik's younger brother, Asif, slept in the adjacent bedroom. He shouted through the wall, "Are you okay?" She said, "No, I need help. My arm is broken." Asif went downstairs to tell the rest of the family. Malik went upstairs flanked with Eshrat, Bushra, Soraya, and Farhat. Bushra took a look at the arm and knew the injury was serious. She said to Malik, "How did that happen?" He said, "She must have fallen after I left." Bushra said, "She will have to go to A&E to have it x-rayed and put in a cast." Soraya said, "Shall I call an ambulance?" Malik said, "No, I'll take her." Malik, Anna, Bushra, and Soraya took the taxi to the hospital. At different points of the commute, the taxi would be jostled to and fro, and Anna would pass out from the shooting pain that was triggered. Anna was brought to the casualty department and was closely guarded by Malik and the women. When a doctor came around, Malik would glare at her every time she was asked a question. He would answer for her. The doctor seemed to accept Malik's description of the cause of Anna's injury at first, though not free of skepticism. When the doctor came back with the results of an x-ray, he said, "As you can see, this is a bad fracture of an unusual type. The only times we usually see this type of complex radial fracture is as a result of non-accidental injury." Bushra and Soraya didn't understand what the doctor was saying, but Malik and Eshrat exchanged glances. Malik said to the doctor, "Well, on this occasion you must be wrong, doctor. I know she was fine when I left the room, but she is a very clumsy girl, always falling and hurting herself, as you can see from all her scars." The doctor said, "Yes, I was going to ask her about that." The doctor turned to face Anna, but Malik and Eshrat intervened. Eshrat said, "My brother's right. She's always falling down the stairs, or cutting herself while she's cooking, or slipping over and knocking her head on the kitchen floor." Malik said, "And she bumps into things too." He turned to Anna and said, Isn't that right, Yasmin?" Anna nodded and said, "Yes, that's right." She feared for the safety of her baby, so she acceded to Malik and Eshrat, as always. The doctor didn't look convinced. He glared at Malik, but made no further comment. Anna was discharged with her arm in a cast and a prescription for painkillers. 2 or 3 weeks later, Anna was showing too much for the pregnancy to remain concealed any longer. She dreaded the family's reaction to one of their own reproducing with a white girl. Unexpectedly, they rejoiced at the news that his first child was soon to be born. Anna hoped that with this news he would go easy on her, but the abuse continued along the same lines. The only thing that changed was that he avoided punching or kicking her in the stomach. It was open season on the rest of her body. Anna gave birth to hers and Malik's baby with the entire family present at the hospital. Naturally, Anna was not involved in the naming of her child, with Malik choosing Perdil as the name of their son. Anna didn't care about his name. She was caught up in bonding with her newborn child. Malik ripped the child from her arms and put him in a cot next to the bed. The nurse asked Anna, "Would you like to give him a little feed?" Malik answered for her, "No. Anna doesn't want to feed the baby herself." The nurse turned to face Anna and said, "Is that right?" Anna was conflicted. She very much wanted to nurse her child, but Malik glared at her and put his hand on her arm, gripping it forcefully. The rest of the family was glaring at her the same way. Anna said, "Yes, that's right." Malik released her arm. He said to the nurse, "Take the baby away." The nurse took the baby out of the room. During the rest of Anna's stay in the hospital, Malik's family stayed with her to ensure she wouldn't say anything to the staff about what was happening to her and also to prevent her escape. Malik took possession of the baby and carried him out of the room with Eshrat and Soraya. Malik took possession of the baby and carried him out of the room, with Eshrat and Soraya following behind him. Anna desperately wanted her son back. She said to Bushra, with tears running down her cheeks, "What are they doing?" Bushra said, "It's what must be done for all babies. They whisper in his ears and put honey in his mouth. We give new babies sweet things to help them love the name of Allah." A cleric soon visited to bestow a blessing upon the baby so that he would become a Muslim. The hospital wanted Anna and the baby to remain in hospital for a minimum of 4 days to ensure that both mother and baby had recovered completely. Malik was outraged. No, it is Eid today. Anna must come home with the baby so that we all celebrate Eid together. Eid is the last day of Ramadan." A doctor paid a visit in the hospital room and insisted Anna and the baby remain in the hospital for a few more days. He said she'd had a hemorrhage while giving birth. Eventually, a nurse brought the baby back in the room. After all, the best thing for a baby during the first few hours of its life is to cling to and bond with its mother. The nurse said to Anna, "For a cuddle with Mum." It was a blissful moment for Anna, even with Malik and his evil family frowning the entire time. Anna and the baby stayed in the hospital for 2 more days. Malik refused to wait any more. Neither Anna nor the baby received enough postnatal care, but Malik ignored her protests when he plucked her forcefully from the hospital. She was still bleeding and weak, but obviously no empathy would be forthcoming. Besides, he loved it when she was bleeding and weak. In the car, Malik ordered Soraya to take the baby from Anna. Anna said, "Why can't I hold him myself?" Malik glared at her through the rearview mirror and said, "Because Soraya will look after the baby and feed him." Why can't I feed him myself? Sariah, the mindless sheep, said, Because it's dirty to feed a baby with milk from your breast. Obviously, nobody in this family opposed the Islamic principle that the female body is nothing but a walking cesspool of filth and disease. Anna said, But it's the most natural way. Sariah took out a bottle and fed Perdil. It was becoming clear to her that Malik and his family did not consider Perdil to be Anna's child. He was Malik's property, first and foremost. When they arrived at the house, Sariah took the baby away, while Malik pushed Anna upstairs to the bedroom. Anna didn't see Perdil the rest of that day. The next morning there was still no sign that she would see her child. She began to panic. He needed his mother and she needed him. She began to shout at them to bring him to her. She then took the tack of banging on the door and stamping her feet. Still no response. Her feelings as the mother of her child were irrelevant to them. That night, Malik raped Anna with the usual aggression and force. She was still bleeding from the hemorrhage. This rape was among the most vicious of them all, and at one point, she felt he would kill her. She was in so much pain she nearly stopped breathing. He tore at the interior of her vagina until she bled all over the sheets. He became excited at the sight of the blood and raped her again. At one point, he turned her over and sodomized her. As he did so, he broke open an old scar, and she bled further still. She dissociated from the experience, which he hated, but she had to cope somehow, and that was the only way. It was better than waiting for the mercy that would never be forthcoming. The next morning, Malik stormed into the room. She acted like she was unconscious, but he kicked her until she acknowledged him. She moaned as the kicks became more and more painful. He pulled her out of bed by her hair. He shouted, "Get those bloody sheets off the bed. You're going to wash them until they're spotless. Come on!" Anna brought the sheets to the bathroom. She put them in the bathtub and ran some water. Malik was impatient. He said, "Come on, you white slut. You're not better than trash. Get a fucking move on. You're not coming out of there until those sheets are spotless." It took Anna 2 hours to wash the blood from the sheets completely. Malik would continually inspect her work. When she thought she was done, he said, "Not good enough. Scrub this one harder, you whore." Once the sheet was cleaned to Malik's satisfaction, Anna collapsed to the floor out of exhaustion. She didn't think she could move a muscle. When Malik realized she was unable to stand, he picked her up, put her over his shoulder, and took her back to the bedroom. Anna became weaker. She stopped eating. All she could think about was her baby. All she wanted was to see him and hold him, but it appeared that would never happen again, and she became deeply depressed. When she slept, she was plagued by nightmarish visions of infanticide. 5 or 6 days after Perdel was born, Anna was still listless, but Bushra came into the room and dressed her before taking her downstairs. She said to Anna, "The health visitor is coming to see you and the baby. You must say nothing." "But what if she asks me questions?" "Say nothing. Malik will answer for you." When the doorbell rang, Malik went to answer it. Sariah came out of her room just in time to hand Perdil to Anna. Even if it would be for less than an hour, Anna was delighted and relieved to have Perdil in her arms again. He was more relaxed in her arms, seemingly aware that he was with his real mother. The health worker said, "Hello, Anna. My name is Sally. I'm your health visitor. If you have any questions or concerns, you can ring me. Here is my number." She handed a card to Anna. Malik said, "I'll take that." Sally was taken aback by this gesture. Realizing this, he said, "Just to keep it safe for Anna." Sally and Anna sat down at a table. Malik stood behind Anna with his hands on her shoulders. Sally, "How well is the baby feeding?" Malik, "Very well." He tightened his grip on Anna's shoulders. Sally, "Are your breasts sore at all, Anna?" Anna opened her mouth to answer. Malik, "No, not sore at all." The truth was, Anna's breasts were very swollen and painful, as they were filling with milk that needed to be expelled. Naturally, alleviating Anna's discomfort was never on Malik's agenda. Sally, "And has the bleeding stopped now?" Malik, "Yes, it's all gone." This was also untrue. Sally, "I hope you will all make sure Anna gets plenty of rest after losing so much blood in the hospital." Malik, "Yes, of course." Bushra, "We will make sure." After examining Perdil briefly, Sally said, "You're obviously doing very well, Anna, and the baby seems very contented in your arms." When it was time to leave, Anna was hoping she could shoot Sally a look to signify she was desperately in need of her help, but Malik whisked Sally away to the front door, so there was no chance of that. Soraya bent toward Anna to take back the baby. Anna shouted, "No!" She clung to Perdil, pressing him against her shoulder. Malik delivered the verdict on Perdil's future. "Don't be so fucking stupid. You didn't think you could keep him, did you? You're not fit to look after your own baby. He's going to have new parents. It's all arranged." He told her that a young Pakistani couple was going to adopt Perdil. They arrived earlier that day. Malik discussed his financial compensation with them. They smiled at Anna, but she wasn't about to smile back at the people who were about to take her baby away from her. Malik said to Soraya, "Take the baby." Anna tried to hold Perdil for just a few seconds longer, but Soraya took him from her arms. Bushra took Anna upstairs to the bedroom and locked the door. Though Perdil was still alive, Anna grieved his absence as if he were dead, and she sobbed uncontrollably. As if the pain of having her baby stolen from her and sold wasn't painful enough, that night Eshrat raped her. He appeared to have the same asphyxiation fetish as Malik, for he held a black cloth over her face while he tore her apart from the inside. She fought back as much as she could, hitting, biting, and scratching him, but it only goaded him on further. He climaxed and withdrew from her. He pulled the black rag off her face, and she was relieved to finally be able to breathe. He turned her back and forced her to perch on the edge of the bed. He said, "You English bitches are only good for blowjobs. Now show me how good you are." Anna was exhausted. She shook her head and clamped her mouth shut. He said, "Playing hard to get? Two can play that game." He made a fist and extended it toward her threateningly. She cried, saying, "No, please don't hurt me. I can't take any more." He laughed at her distress. He opened his fist and smacked her with the back of his hand across her mouth. He cut her lip and left her with pain in her jaw. He pushed his penis into her mouth and rammed it toward the back of her throat, very similar to what Malik would do. She vomited as he did so. When he ejaculated and saw her vomit on him, he was furious. He yelled, "I'll teach you!" He pulled her to the floor and kicked her repeatedly on her head, buttocks, legs, and back. She curled into a ball to protect herself against the kicks, but she did not deflect injury. She felt a sharp, stabbing pain on one side of her back, which became a severe ache. What she would learn later was that her kidney was damaged and ran to shrinkage. She began to cry on the floor. Bizarrely, Eschrot suddenly showed some concern for her. He said, "Do you need anything?" "No." After he left, she took the painkillers, though this injury would cause her far more complications than a punch or kick to the torso. Anna got to see Perdil one last time. She got to hold him during his Islamic circumcision ceremony. She watched as a Muslim holy man with no medical background cut Perdil's foreskin with no anesthesia. The baby was shocked and cried hysterically, with blood running down his legs. It was almost as shocking for Anna, and it was to represent the last time she would ever see him. She was helpless to protect him, which added to her suffering. 10 days after Perdil's circumcision, Soraya and Bushra dressed Anna in a red Pakistani outfit with matching scarf. It occurred to her that something important was about to happen. She was worried that she was about to be married to Malik. Anna said to Soraya, "Why must I dress up?" "Malik wants friends to meet you." As they made their way downstairs, Bushra said, "You no look at men. Keep head down." Aside from Malik, there were 8 men in the living room. The youngest looked to be about 40. Malik put his arm around Anna. The men all stared at Anna and talked about her in their language. Based on her limited knowledge of Punjabi, she pieced together that arrangements were being made that involved money changing hands. Malik settled matters with them, and they all agreed to the conditions he proposed. A man who sat next to Anna began to touch her. The other men watched and urged him onwards. He started with her hair, then her cheek, her shoulder, her arm, to her breast. He lingered there, fondling her breast. He was getting excited. Anna dissociated. As this went on, an old man on the other side of her began to do the same. He traced his hand slowly along the curvature of her body. She thought, how could Malik allow this? Malik had a big stupid grin on his face. The other men eagerly anticipated their turn with Anna. Abruptly, Malik brought a halt to the proceedings when he shouted, "Enough!" The other men were disappointed. He showed them all to the door. Malik took Anna upstairs and raped her in the bedroom, after which he fell asleep. Anna lay awake for a while, worried that her next encounters with the men, if there were more, would lead to something worse. Something like what Malik subjected her to in the bedroom. A few days later, Anna's worst nightmare came to pass. She was brought to the living room where 2 of the men she met from before came over. One of the men sat next to Anna on a settee. She shifted away. He said, "Don't be silly. We are here to see you." She hoped in vain that Malik would intervene. He just smiled as he watched the 2 men. The man next to Anna edged up closer to her. He put an arm around her shoulder. He touched and fondled her breast with his other hand. She pulled away, but he pulled her back. He put his head close to hers. She was disgusted by his halitosis. She continued to try pushing him away, but he would always pull her back to him. He pushed his lips to hers. She was so repulsed by the prospect of kissing this man that she gagged. He ignored it and forced a kiss on her. He lost patience with her and pushed her down on the settee. She said to Malik, shaking with fear, "Help! Stop him!" Malik ignored her distress. The older man said, "Now I'll show you what a real man does." He unfastened his pants and pulled them down. A terrible, fetid stench emanated from his nether regions. It was repugnant and turned her stomach. He loosened her sash, pulled down the pants of her outfit, called a salwar kameez, and pinned her down. He lifted up her legs and forced himself into her. She tried to struggle out of it, but he was too strong for her. After a minute, he was finished and left the room with Malik in tow. Anna felt appalled, degraded, humiliated, and ashamed. She had no time to get her clothing back together before the other man advanced upon her. He was in his 60s and uglier than the others. He pulled up the dress part of her outfit to reveal her breasts. She turned her head away as he put his penis between her breasts and pressed them against it. He thrust it between them until he shot his semen on her chest and neck. Anna was disgusted. He didn't care about her discomfort. He just went off to pay Malik and tell him about how good he was at sex. After the men were gone, Malik was so aroused by watching them have their way with Anna that he brought her to the bedroom and raped her. During the subsequent weeks, the same men went over, and it became routine, complete with Malik defiling her afterwards. The other men would pay for oral sex because they felt it wasn't a job for Pakistani women, only for quote-unquote white whores, as they put it. Anna was never informed in advance about what they expected. She would be forced into this position or that so they could do whatever they wanted. The oldest of all the men was 70. He didn't want full coitus. He would just push himself on her and kiss her with his rancid breath. When he went to Malik to pay for her services, she would be shuddering with disgust. 3 years had passed since Malik had first brought Anna into captivity. He and Eshrat were raping and beating her regularly. Malik was still trafficking her to other Pakistani men. Anna protested with hunger strikes. Sometimes she would eat nothing but 1 chapati a week. The household's women would sometimes literally force food into her mouth and even press it down her throat. One of the worst experiences Anna had with the trafficking was when she served 2 elderly men as a threesome. They smelled rank. They reeked of garlic, curry, tobacco, and body odor. One sat on her face, forcing his penis into her mouth. The other raped her, hitting and scratching her as he did so when she was too unresponsive for his liking. The men spoke frequently to each other throughout the act, providing a running commentary to each other as if it were a sporting event. As they drew near to climax, they would squeeze her breasts hard. The one forcing oral sex on her ejaculated and sent his discharge sliding down her throat. The other one raped her until he made her sore. He smacked her legs several times as he did so. After he ejaculated, he withdrew. Afterwards, she was exhausted, sore, and bruised. She even felt disgusted with herself. The worst thing that could have happened in that moment would have been for Malik to rape her, and that was exactly what transpired. Many of the clients arrived in pairs. They didn't always rape her in Malik's house. Sometimes they raped her in a taxi. She was once taken to a field where she was pinned down onto a thorn bush, and she felt the thorns pierce her skin with every one of his thrusts. He put his foot on her stomach to pin her down. She was so depleted of energy and will, she could not bring herself to resist. As he yanked her back across the field, she stumbled 2 or 3 times. On the way to the house, she became suicidal. She thought, "Just kill me, strangle me, and leave me in a ditch. Kill me now. Put me in the boot of the car and let me suffocate. Freeze me. Just let me die." When she returned to the house, Malik made her take a bath. His idea of giving her a bath was to fill a pail with hot water and give her a fatty bar of soap. She began to cry as she sat in the tub naked. She felt she would have been better off dead. She had no privacy at all. At one point, she looked around the room in hopes that she would find a razor blade. She wanted to slit her wrists and bleed out. Just end it. No razor blades could be found. The thorns remained in her back for days. Malik would rape her with ferocity, and the thorns would dig into her back as he did so. He was punishing her for what he saw her do with the men who paid him to rape her, which she never wanted. As usual, he got a thrill out of watching her suffer. He took the arm he broke and pulled it up her back and twisted it as before. He broke it again. She was taken to the hospital again, and as before, she didn't answer the doctor's questions because Malik answered for her. The rapes were a daily occurrence. If it wasn't Malik, it was Eshrot or one of the trafficking clients. She had occasional miscarriages and would have to be taken to hospital to be treated. She also suffered from occasional bouts of cystitis and thrush. The thrush led to pelvic inflammatory disease, which is a lifelong condition and continues to cause her a great deal of pain and suffering. Amid all the rape and illness, Anna became increasingly weak. She lost weight to the point of becoming skeletal. She fought with Malik and Eshrot as they tried to force her to eat. Anna became depressed and despondent to the extent that she was nearly catatonic. She began to experience regular bouts of nausea. At first, she chalked it up to the force feedings and the oral sex she was forced to perform for Malik and the rest of the scumbags. Her perspective shifted when she began to feel swelling in her stomach. The family wanted her to get pregnant again, but up until then, it was unlikely to happen with her being beaten savagely on an almost daily basis. She was unsure about whether or not to tell Malik she was pregnant. She hoped that if she did, he would at least refrain from beating her about the stomach. One night he was on a rampage and eager to beat her black and blue. He even put on a pair of shoes that he used when he kicked her because he knew they would cause the most amount of pain and damage. She curled up into a ball in the corner. He was enraged by her resistance, so he pulled her up by her hair and aimed a kick at her stomach. She screamed, "No, I'm pregnant!" He stopped short. He let go of her hair. She collapsed onto the floor. She said, "Please don't kick my tummy." He smiled and left the room. The women had Anna downstairs over the next few days, insisting that because she was pregnant, she must eat, and she did. Anna told the women she was suffering from a great deal of pain. One day, Muniza gave Anna a massage. At one point, Anna said to Bushra, "Please help me. I'm in terrible pain. I need help." Seconds later, Anna was doubled over and trembling uncontrollably. She felt like she was on the verge of urinary incontinence. She sat on the toilet with Bushra keeping watch nearby. Anna hemorrhaged into the toilet. And that was the last thing she remembered for a long time. What Anna learned later was that she was treated in intensive care. Only 2 family members were allowed in, so Malik and Bushra stood by the bed. A doctor carried out a blood transfusion for her. He notified Malik that she was in urgent need of an operation. Malik identified as next of kin and signed an agreement. The next day, Anna woke, and she was shocked to find herself in hospital with machines beeping and flickering all around her. She turned to someone standing nearby and said, "What happened?" They said, "You collapsed at home and were brought in here. You had an ectopic pregnancy." It was a doctor. He said, "You've lost a great deal of blood, so we're giving you a transfusion. You've had nearly 6 pints now, and your fallopian tube ruptured, so you have to have major surgery to get that all sorted out. Fortunately, the operation was successful. However, you will take some time to recover fully after losing so much blood and the shock to your body, and of course recuperation after the operation. Malik interjected. We can look after her at home. The doctor said, No, I'm afraid she will need full nursing care for several weeks to ensure she is fully recovered. The doctor spoke as gingerly as he could to Anna. You nearly died. You seemed so weak already, and we weren't sure you would survive the operation. Anna said, Thank you for saving me. Malik scowled. He stepped forward and grabbed her arm as a means to convey that she was not to say another word. The doctor had some bad news, but sadly, I'm afraid the baby had already died. He didn't have a chance, I'm afraid. Anna nodded a silent thank you to the doctor. A couple days later, a nurse was taking Anna's temperature when Anna got a glimpse of her chart. She was horrified when the name Malik Aziz was penciled in as being her quote-unquote husband. Anna was terrified that the so-called marriage might be legally binding. The next day, the doctor who attended to Anna when she gave birth to Perdil said, I'm Dr. Stockwell. Do you remember me? She nodded. Malik's hand was on her arm as before. She said, Yes, when I had my baby. Malik tightened his grip and his face darkened with anger. Stockwell said, It was a little boy, wasn't it? She nodded. How is he doing? Malik said, He's fine. The doctor looked down at Malik's grip on her arm. He was squeezing it so hard it was turning red. The doctor said to Anna, Why didn't you come to see me about your pain? You could have come for an emergency appointment. She wanted desperately to tell him she was a prisoner and sex slave in Malik's house, but she didn't. Malik answered for her. Anna is always busy helping us out at home. His mother and sister nodded in agreement like the morons they are. He continued, And she didn't tell us she was in pain. We didn't know there was anything wrong with her. More nodding. The doctor wanted to say something, but he bit his lip. He said, I see. After glancing at Anna, he said, Well, it was touch and go, but you were very lucky this time, young lady. Make sure you say if you ever feel poorly or in pain again. Anna nodded without a word. The fourth day Anna was in hospital, Malik became impatient to take her home. The medical staff insisted that her blood must continue to be monitored, and her operation wound must be inspected regularly. Malik wouldn't hear of it. The doctor said to him, Well, it is your risk, of course. We would far prefer to monitor her closely, at least until her wound is fully healed. Malik was firm. No, she wants to come home. Malik looked over at Anna and said, Don't you, Anna? She hesitated for a couple of seconds, but whispered, Yes. The doctor said to Anna, Well, it is your choice, but if you are determined to go home with your family, then they must take very good care of you. The doctor turned to Malik. No going upstairs, no housework or lifting. She will need complete rest. She will need to have a bed downstairs near a toilet and bathroom, and where someone can keep a close eye on her. Can you do that? Malik said, Yes, of course. My sister and my mother are at home all day. They will take great care of her. And you must make sure she continues to eat. Yes, of course. And I will arrange for your GP and the district nurse to make regular visits to check on her progress and change the dressings. That will be fine. Though Malik's family did set up a bed in the living room, Malik ordered Anna to work in the kitchen. Anna said, I'm too tired to work. He said, Get to fucking bed then. The following morning, Anna was struggling to walk. She was in so much pain, but Malik forced her to sweep the floors. At one point, Anna approached Bushra and said, I'm ill. I feel really ill. Malik heard her say this, and he backhanded her so hard she fell to the floor. Bushra and Maniza helped her up and brought her to a settee, where she fell asleep in short order. Just because Anna was in convalescence didn't mean Malik was going to let up with his tortures. He pinned her on her back, pulled up her clothes, and pulled her pants down. He ripped the dressing off her surgical wound. Anna said, "What did you do that for?" She was terrified and smarting from the pain. She said, "The doctor said I had to keep the dressing on all the time, and the district nurses would come to change it." He said, "Shut the fuck up." He took up a razor. He said, "They don't know what they're talking about." He looked down at her vagina. He said, "You look disgusting with all that hair, you dirty white slut." He started to shave her pubic stubble as his relatives walked in and out of the room. She was worried that he would nick her wound. The razor hadn't been sterilized, and she worried that if he did strike her wound, it would lead to an infection. It didn't concern him at all. He shaved her bare and then joined his brothers for a smoke. Anna fell asleep afterwards. Malik woke her later. He said, "Get up and help us make dinner." He kicked her leg to propel her upwards. For 2 hours, Anna prepared food while worrying that the exertion would pry open her surgical wound. The next day, the district nurse was due to arrive. Malik woke Anna. Just then, she had an unexpected urge to put her hand on her stomach. She was alarmed when she discovered a large bulge in the middle of the wound. She announced she needed to go to the toilet. Soraya went with her. When Anna lifted her clothing, she nearly passed out when she saw blood and some kind of pale fluid seeping out of the incision. The incision had swollen to the point where it was stretching the wound, pushing against the clips that were holding it together. It looked like it would burst open any minute. Anna panicked and cried. She said, "Help me!" Soraya helped settle Anna on the toilet and went to get Malik. At the hospital, a doctor said, "It's a hematoma. The best thing for that would be another operation, to make sure we can clean it all up properly." Malik said, No operation. She doesn't want an operation." He looked at Anna. "Do you?" Anna shook her head. Malik said, "Can't you just sort it out and let her come home again?" The doctor said, "Well, let me just go and ask my senior. I'll be right back in a couple of minutes." Malik paced as Bushra, Soraya, and Farhat stood guard at the bed. When the doctor returned, he said, "Right, I've spoken with the registrar, and he says we can treat it without another operation, provided it cleans up well, but I cannot guarantee that until we've done it." Malik said, "What will you have to do? Will it take long?" "We will give Anna a local anesthetic, undo a couple of the clips so that we can take away as much of the hematoma as we can reach, hopefully all of it, insert a tube to drain the rest, and replace the clips, and, if it's all okay, we'll put on a new dressing, but she will have to stay in until it's healed this time. We can't risk it getting infected or opening up again." Malik said, "But we can look after her. It's this way or the full operation, and she would have to stay in for even more nights after that." "All right, we'll take turns to stay here with her." "Oh, you don't need to do that. We are a family. We cannot leave her alone." Malik began visiting the bedroom each morning with a pill and glass of water in hand. He would force Anna to take the pill and drink the water all the way down. He would even go so far as to inspect her mouth to make sure it was swallowed. The first time, she said, "What is this? What does it fucking matter to you?" "I don't want to take tablets I don't need." "Well, we want you to take this every day because you need it to help you make new babies. Don't you want another baby?" One day while Anna was sitting in the living room, she began to notice some involuntary twitching. It started in her back. As she journeyed toward the bathroom, she discovered her feet were turning inwards. Her hands began to turn at a strange angle. She experienced flashes of heat and cold. Soon her breathing became labored. When she headed back to the settee on which she had been sitting, she was twitching all over and struggling to breathe. Some of Soraya's and Bushra's children were heading out of the house to go to Eshrat's home. When they saw how Anna's gyrations were distorting her movements, they pointed at her and giggled. Malik put down his newspaper and told them off. They ran away, mocking Anna as they impersonated her twitching and gasping for breath. Malik said to Anna, "Stop your stupid play acting, you white whore." He called the other adults into the living room. He said, "Look at that fucking bitch, being stupid and pretending to be ill." Though they laughed with him, their laughter was awkward, as if they seemed to realize that her symptoms were serious. Malik said to Anna, "Get off that settee and go do some work." When Anna was unable to get up, he grabbed her arm and yanked her up. He slapped her on the face and dragged her into the kitchen as she struggled to breathe. He said, "Make me some lunch." She said, "But I can't breathe. Please. The doctor. Hospital." And now Anna was wheezing loud enough for others to hear. Her throat ached from the pain of the struggle to breathe. She now felt like she was suffocating. She collapsed onto the floor. She was still conscious. She struggled to find a position that would enable her to breathe. She got on all fours, which helped her breathe somewhat easier. She was still fighting for air, however. Malik was shouting and casting aspersions at Anna, but she paid little heed to him as she concentrated so intently on bringing air into her lungs. She couldn't ignore the kick he delivered to her midsection, however. Pain rushed throughout her body. He shouted, "Get up, you stupid bitch." He tried to pull her up by her hair, but he just wound up dropping her to the floor. She was still as winded as ever and struggled to get up on all fours. She was terrified now. She said, "Help! Can't breathe." Anna was taken to hospital. She was hooked up to an oxygen machine. Her heart was beating so fast, they feared she was about to go into cardiac arrest. She was in anaphylactic shock. It turned out she had a violent allergic reaction to the pills Malik and the family had been giving her. Malik gave Anna one of the most savage beatings of all, and the impact was so severe she had another heavy bleeding following a miscarriage. She was taken to hospital, but Malik and his coven wouldn't even let her stay for that night. The doctors were asking a lot of questions about all her bruises and injuries. X-rays revealed she had a couple of broken vertebrae and a broken rib. Malik told them she fell down the stairs. To avoid being questioned further, the family snuck her out of the hospital. She was coming in and out of consciousness due to the anesthetic she was given as they dragged her home. Anna had a fear of snakes. Malik placed an aquarium in her room, which housed a cobra. Aside from all the beatings and rapes, the presence of the serpent caused her additional emotional distress, and she began to crack. She could barely sleep because she was plagued by nightmares involving snakes. That was how much she feared the possibility of the cobra escaping. Anna spent every waking moment crying. After all, the suffering was never ending. She refused to eat. They tried to force feed her, but it was in vain. She just wanted to die. The gradual starvation would likely take too long. She began to devise a scheme to end her life. Anna became pregnant again. She hoped it would be a girl because females are less than worthless in the eyes of Pakistanis, so she figured she might get to keep the child. One night when Malik pinned Anna to the bed to rape her, he noticed a protuberance on her stomach. He said, "Is that?" She said, "Yes, I think so. Please don't hurt the baby." He still raped her that night, but he didn't beat her. Anna began to eat again for the good of the baby. Malik refused to remove the snake tank from her room, so she never slept as well as an expecting mother should. One night she said to him, "I can't sleep, and I can't rest with that snake in here. Please, can you take it out, at least while I'm pregnant?" He said, "No, he fucking loves it in here with you, and I want the baby to like snakes too." Despite the wretched circumstances in which the child was conceived, Anna was still looking forward to the birth and already loved her child. Anna was taken to hospital when she went into labor. The baby was indeed a girl. Malik named her and grabbed her from Anna's arms. He told the nurse to take her away. The nurse was shocked. She said to Anna, "Wouldn't you like to hold her a bit longer? It will help you to bond with each other." Malik said, "No, they can bond at home." The nurse looked at Anna. Anna desperately wanted to hold her baby longer, but Malik grabbed her hand under her blanket and twisted her fingers so hard it began to hurt. All Anna could bring herself to do was shake her head and wave the baby away. On the way home from the hospital, Anna removed a hat from the baby's head and discovered it had been shaven. Bushra said, "It shows that Durnez is the servant of Allah. It is good." Malik said, "Soraya, you take the baby so that Yasmin can have her rest upstairs." Anna said, "No, please. I don't want any rest. I want to feed her myself." Back at the house, Malik ushered Anna upstairs and said, "White people's milk is dirty. Durnaz needs good, healthy milk in a baby's bottle. Soraya will look after her very well. Now you go and rest." Anna looked back and saw Soraya holding her daughter. It was like a knife in her heart. The next day, Anna was taken downstairs for yet another ceremony. There were a number of guests assembled in the living room. She said to Malik, "Why couldn't I look after Durnaz myself?" Malik, "Because you were too ill to look after her." Anna, "But I wasn't ill." Malik, "You were not capable. Soraya looked after Durnaz for you." Anna, "But she's my baby." Malik, "You gave birth to her, yes, but she needs a proper mother." Anna, "Could I hold her one last time?" Malik, "If you want. I'm feeling kind today, but not for long. Her new parents have come to collect her." He pointed to a middle-aged couple standing across the room. Anna, "But they are too old to have children." Malik, "They can't have their own. That's why they want to give Durnaz a good home." Anna, "But I'm her mother. Nobody could be a better mother to her than me. I'm the one who gave birth to her." Malik, "Shut your fucking mouth, or you won't get to hold her at all." Anna was made to sign a contract in Punjabi with her real name. If she hadn't, Malik wouldn't have let her hold Durnez one last time and say goodbye. Before the adoptive parents left, Malik brought Durnez over to Anna. He said, "Quick, say goodbye to your daughter." Anna held Durnez, stroking her cheek and earlobe. She put her cheek to hers and inhaled her scent. This was her last moment with her daughter, and she wanted it to be savored for posterity. Malik said, "Hurry!" Anna kissed Durnez and sang Rockabye Baby to her. Malik grabbed the baby from her before the end of the lullaby. The rapes returned to their previous rate of brutality and regularity. Eventually she became pregnant again. The snake remained in her room, and Malik would brandish it as a threat or a means to blackmail her. She stopped eating and fell into a debilitating depression. She was devoid of energy and became narcoleptic. At this point, she just laid listless as Malik raped her, hoping that with her submission he would get it over with. It had the opposite effect. He was so enraged by her lack of struggling that he would smash her against the walls. He would fly into a rage, kicking her dozens of times and punching her as often. He would smother her as before, often knocking her unconscious. Anna told Malik she was pregnant, and he backed off with the beatings. He left her alone entirely for a few days. In the meantime, she started eating again for the baby's sake. After a week of Malik's absence, she heard someone stomping up the stairs outside. She expected Malik, but it was Eshrot. He was in a rage. He pulled her to the floor and pinned her down with his entire body. He was so heavy she couldn't breathe beneath him. He tortured her throughout the rape. The beatings were so savage she couldn't dissociate from them. They hurt so much she began to scream. Eshrot yelled, "Shut the fuck up." He thrust himself into her with greater force as he continued to smother her. After climaxing, he beat Anna with a chapati rolling pin. She begged for clemency, saying, "Please, please don't hurt the baby." He either didn't hear this or didn't care. He whacked her with the rolling pin in an irrational frenzy, with all his strength. Within the throes of this attack, he appeared to enter a state of hysteria, vocalizing his rage with onomatopoeia. She felt her bones crack as he continued to strike her. He hit her so hard, she passed out. Anna woke up in hospital. The staff were shocked by the number and extent of the injuries. X-rays revealed fractured ribs and damage to her back. One of her kidneys was found to have shrunken and was inactive. Miraculously, the baby was still alive. The staff recommended that she stay for several days, but the family smuggled her out after only 48 hours. She was permitted to sleep on a settee in the living room, but just for a few days. Her ribs ached and her back was exceedingly sore. It took 2 weeks for the bruises on her face to disappear. For the first time in years, she had gotten a few nights of proper sleep. Eventually, Malik took her back to the bedroom, where the cobra awaited her presence. He raped and beat her routinely as before, though he was careful not to risk the baby's life. He wasn't satisfied by the rapes, because without her suffering and blood, it just didn't turn him on as it otherwise would. One night after a rape, he turned to her and said the last thing she would have ever expected to hear. "It's just because I love you. I do love you." She was conflicted. She was both pleased and horrified. Her abusive father had sent that contradictory message to her after hurting her. She thought, is that what love is? Late in Anna's recent pregnancy, she was eating for the good of the child. She wasn't excited by this baby's birth because she knew it would only be sold. She was beginning to experience ill health. She ran a high fever and vomited frequently. She had diarrhea. She began to worry about the baby. She wondered if she was making it as sick as she was. The stench in the room from all the bodily fluids was so powerful, Moniz wore a mask when she cleaned it up. Malik called the hospital and reported what was going on. He called an ambulance this time because he didn't want Anna to soil his car. She didn't remember anything about the commute. Anna woke up in hospital. A doctor said, Mrs. Aziz." Anna said, "No." He said, "Oh, I am sorry. I thought this man was your husband." "No, I'm Anna Ruston." "Oh, I see. Well, that's probably why we couldn't find your medical notes. Could you just spell that out for me?" He left for a few minutes. Malik walked over to the bed and put his hand on her arm and gripped it tightly. She felt lightheaded and groggy. She wondered if she was married to Malik while unconscious, but then realized it would have required her to sign the legal paperwork. Then again, it would have been just like him to forge her signature. The doctor came back and said, "As soon as your family brought you in, we put you on a saline drip, as you were very dehydrated, because of the sickness and diarrhea. We also gave you some medication to reduce those nasty symptoms. We seem to have it under control now, but when we did some tests, they confirmed what we thought. You were seriously ill, and it's a very good thing your family called an ambulance when they did. You have septicemia. It's a serious condition in which the blood is infected, and this affects your whole body. If you hadn't come into the hospital today, it could have been very dangerous and started affecting your internal organs." She said, "The baby?" Malik was frowning at her. He gripped her arm more tightly. The doctor said, "Well, the baby's heart is beating, although it is rather fast, and we are monitoring him carefully. But in view of your illness, we will need to do an emergency cesarean within the hour. Please, could you sign this permission form?" She looked at Malik, and he nodded his approval. She signed. Anna woke from the procedure with Malik standing beside the bed. The nurse held up the child. It was premature. She told her it was a boy. He was taken to an incubator in the neonatal intensive care unit for urgent medical care. Anna said, "What's the matter with him?" The nurse said, "It was difficult to get him breathing, and he needs immediate attention to try and stabilize him. It looks like you have passed on your septicemia to the baby, as we expected. He is underweight and in a very serious condition, so he needs special care." As Anna was wheeled into a private room, Malik was glaring at her. She got the feeling he considered her to be at fault for the baby's condition. Nothing to do with the daily rapes and beatings. Malik was invited to have a look at the baby. Soraya, Moniz, and Bushra stayed in the room. Anna said to the doctor, "Can I see the baby too?" Bushra glared at her, but Anna paid this no heed. All she cared about was that the baby see its mother. She hoped they would understand, being mothers themselves. The doctor said, "When we have your heart rate and blood pressure down a bit, we will wheel you along and down in the lift with your drip on a wheeled stand to visit your baby." Anna was relieved to hear that she would get to see her baby. By the time Anna got to see the baby, the naming ceremony had already taken place. His condition was so severe, there were tubes and wires attached to him in the incubator. She said to Malik, "What's his name?" "Alam." One of the doctors approached Anna. "Are you Alam's mother?" "Yes, how is he?" "His condition is critical. He has septicemia, and there are also signs of meningitis, so we are trying to treat that in its early stages. But I'm afraid the two conditions together make this a very dangerous time for your baby. But I can assure you that he will have the best possible care, and we are doing all we can to stabilize him." Malik said, "He may die." There was an accusatory tone in his voice. The doctor said, "That is a possibility, I'm afraid. The odds are against him at the moment, but we believe he has a chance of pulling through." Anna didn't remember much from the rest of that day. When she woke, Anna said, "Alam?" The family's women nodded to indicate he was still alive. After a week of inpatient treatment, Anna was in recovery. A doctor notified her that the septicemia was brought under control and she was stable. Malik said, "When can we take her home?" "Well, as you can see, she is still dependent on the drip, and we have to monitor her vital signs on a regular basis on this monitor. So it will be several days yet, I'm afraid." Malik was outraged. He said, "We need her at home now." "Well, I'm afraid she can't go home until we're happy she's over the worst and feeling well enough to leave. But she will be able to move onto a ward in the next day or two, so that will be like a halfway point." If she can't come home, she must stay here. I'm afraid that's not possible, and it's not in the patient's best interests. After Malik and the doctor left the room, Anna said to Bushra, "How is Alam?" "Still alive and in his incubator. He had to have a full blood transfusion, and he remains very ill. They say it's touch and go. The nurses are keeping a 24-hour watch." "Thank you." The hospital staff insisted that Malik's sentries leave at 10 p.m., which was when they locked all the outside doors. Malik was apoplectic and confronted the hospital's manager, saying there needed to be at least one family member by Anna's bedside 24/7. They didn't allow it. One nurse tried to get Anna to open up about the truth of her situation with Malik. Anna didn't put anything past Malik. She wondered if he had set it up as a ruse to trick her. Anna would learn later that the nurse noted in her log that she suspected Anna was in an abusive situation. It did occur to Anna to tell the staff what Malik was putting her through, but she was so frightened of the possibility of Malik tracking her down and exacting revenge that she couldn't bring herself to do it. When Malik got Anna back to the bedroom, he beat her savagely, blaming her for giving Alam septicemia. He blamed her for getting sick, for the child being unwell. He blamed her for everything. He punched and kicked her endlessly. He screamed and cursed at her the entire time, saying things like, "You fucking whore, you white bitch, dirty cunt, fatherfucker." He cut her throughout the beating, and the sight of blood turned him on, so he raped her. It was a revenge rape. It was aggressive, with no thought given to the fact that she was still in recovery. After raping her, he took the cobra out of the tank. She screamed and buried her head under a pillow. Her entire body was trembling. He said, "That's what you'll get if you don't do exactly what I tell you." She shuddered from the thought of being attacked by the snake until she fell asleep hours later. Alam was in his incubator for 28 days. Malik and other members of his family visited him, but Malik would not allow Anna to see her son. The next time she saw him was right before he was sold to a couple. One day, Muniza absent-mindedly left a door open while tending to her garden. Anna ran outside in an attempt to escape, but she was caught by Malik's brothers and brought back to the house. When they had her back in the living room, Eshrat backhanded her, saying, "How dare you disrespect our family like that? You're a disrespectful white slut, and you're never going out again." Khalid said, "Yes, you've done a very bad thing. You've put shame on our family." Syed said, "You've got to be watched all the time from now on." Farhat came in and started cursing at Anna in Punjabi, poking her as she did so. Eshrat called Malik. He told him in Punjabi that Anna had been wicked and exaggerated the details of her escape to get him even more riled up. Anna was shaking from fear. When Malik arrived, he went straight over to Anna. He slapped her in the face a few times. He pulled her around by her hair so hard he pulled out entire clumps. He screamed and ranted. He punched her several times. Eshrat said, "Hit her again." Malik punched and kicked Anna a few more times. He grabbed her arm and lugged her upstairs. He threw her in the bedroom and locked her in as he shouted other obscenities at her. For weeks after the escape, Malik raped and beat Anna with more ferocity than usual. He would say things like, "You bitch, why did you try to escape? You needn't think you can get wise to me. I'm your boss. I control you. If you ever try to escape again, I will break both your legs." Anna became more determined than ever to kill herself, but she welcomed death in any form. One day, Muniza forgot to lock Anna's room's door before leaving. Anna tried to escape, but she passed out when she reached the first floor of the house. Anna woke in hospital. She said, "What happened? Am I dead now?" Malik was angry. He said, "Stop asking the doctor questions." The doctor said, "It's all right. Ask any questions you like." Malik glared at her. The doctor said, "You had a particularly nasty fall. The x-rays show you have some cracked ribs and vertebrae, and a small bone broken in your wrist. So that's why you're wearing a brace on that arm. 2 of your vertebrae have hairline fractures, so it's very important that you lie flat on your back and keep as still as you can to keep them stable while they start to mend." That night, Malik and his clan were disallowed to remain with Anna. Anna began to cry. She thought, "I can't even kill myself properly." At one point, a nurse came to her bedside with a chair and sat down. She took her hand in hers and sat in silence for a moment. She said, "Did you do it on purpose?" Anna was crying too much to speak, but she nodded. "Did you really mean to kill yourself?" Anna nodded. "You don't have to tell me anything, but is it something to do with family troubles, with the people you had visiting you all day?" Anna nodded. She whispered, "Thank you. Try to get some sleep. Sleep is the best healer. It won't solve all your problems, but it can give you the strength to cope better and try to sort them out yourself." That was the last she saw of that nurse. Malik didn't disturb Anna the first night she was back at the house. The next evening, he walked in the room with a truncheon, or billy club. She assumed he was going to beat her with it. She was wrong. He tore off her pants and defiled her with the club. He rammed it forcefully into her with as much velocity and aggression of which he was capable. He watched her face intently, eager to savor every moment of her agony. He went from simple defilement to ramming it in with all of his strength wherever it encountered resistance. He was wrecking her on the inside. She closed her eyes so she wouldn't at least have to see his ugly face, but he slapped her face to force her to open them up. He said, "Are you enjoying that, you white bitch? There, are you enjoying that?" She shook her head. He took it out, which also hurt. She was worried that he may have done more damage to her fractured vertebrae. She presumed he wouldn't do anything more with the truncheon, giving her injured back. He was so aroused by her suffering, he raped her with his penis of comparably minuscule dimensions. As Anna recovered from her latest injuries, she decided she must die. She set her sights on another hunger strike. Malik got Eshrat to force-feed her, but she would just vomit it back up afterwards. She became skeletal. Everyone in the house was angry, but this time around, Anna was not the subject of their derision. Muniza had escaped. She occupied the second lowest rung in the female hierarchy in the household, and her life was reduced to non-stop physical and emotional torture. A neighbor reported that she saw Muniza get in a car and leave. Anna heard statements about Muniza from the rest of the family. "How dare she leave after all we've done for her? She's a disgrace. Yes, she's put shame on this family. Who's going to do her work now?" One day, during some kind of chicken slaughtering ceremony, the house was empty, except for Anna sitting in the living room. When she realized no one else was in the house, she made a run for it. She ran out to the street in bare feet, scraping some of her skin off. Malik and his family caught up with her. She didn't have the energy to propel her far after the long period of starvation. Malik grabbed her by the hair and said, "You will never forget this night. You will never forget I'm the boss. What made you think you could run away from me? You will never escape. Do you hear that? You are in for the worst beating of your life. Just you wait and see." Back at the house, Malik threw Anna on a settee. He and Eshrot took turns beating her, delivering slaps, punches, and kicks to the point of exhaustion. The rest of the family looked on, rooting for them, howling for Anna's blood. 5 minutes into the beating, there was a loud and relentless knock on the door. The family ignored it at first, but then someone shouted through the letterbox, "Open up! Police!" Syed went to answer the door. Malik and Eshrot stopped beating Anna. Malik barked at Anna, "Sit up! Wipe the blood off your face." He gave her a filthy handkerchief. She wiped the blood off. He said, "Now put your scarf on properly and bow your head. Act normally and don't say a word, or you know what you will get." The females and children stood near the doorway while the men stood around the settees. 2 police officers sat on the settee opposite Anna. One took out a notebook and pen. The other appeared to be a senior officer, like a sergeant. Anna felt Malik staring at her. He said to the policeman, "Can you please tell us what is the reason for your visit?" "There has been a complaint from one of your neighbors that she heard a lot of screaming and shouting going on in this house this evening. We have come to investigate the complaint. Are you okay?" Anna realized the policeman was talking to her, but she was disallowed from speaking by Malik and the rest of the family. They were all staring daggers at her. The policeman said, "Do you want to put a report in?" She shook her head. Malik had stripped her of all her strength, courage, and autonomy. Her head was bowed down too far for the policeman to see her black eye and the cuts and bruises on her cheeks and forehead. The sergeant said, "What was going on here? What was the screaming about?" He was referring to an incident when Malik raped Anna anally and vaginally with a large cucumber, which was so painful it made her scream. Soraya stepped forward, and with nodded approval from Eshrot, she spoke. "That must have been my younger children. They were having a play fight in the bath, but they're in bed now, probably asleep." After pausing, she said, "Do you want me to go and wake them up?" No, don't worry about that. But what about the shouting?" Eshrot said, "That was me, sir. I had to go in and tell my children off for making so much noise." "I see." Malik said, "Will that be all?" "Is there anything else going on here we should know about?" The sergeant looked at Anna again. She said nothing as tears fell down her cheeks. They were not visible beyond the scarf. Malik said, "Oh, no, there's nothing going on here." Eshrot said, "It must definitely have been the kids making the noise." "Well, if we do have any more complaints, we will come and investigate." The sergeant stood, getting ready to go. "Sorry to have bothered you, but I'm sure you understand that we have to follow up any concerns of this kind." Malik said, "Yes, of course." He escorted the police to the door. Eshrot and his brothers went around the house, shutting all the doors and windows and locking them. Farhat took Anna to Eshrot in Soraya's living room. Their house was connected to Malik's through a door. Malik came into the living room and cursed Anna while smacking her in the head and face as he did so. As usual, they blamed her for everything. Malik said, "We can't trust you anymore, you white bitch." Eshrot said, "Yes, the only thing we can do now is tie you up and bind you to the bed upstairs." Soraya said, "You brought disrespect on our family." Bushra said, "So you cannot sit with us any more." Farhat only nodded, but she took great pleasure from this exchange, smiling all the while. Malik said, "You don't ever try to run away again. If you even think of it, I'll get my Jamaican friend to come and kneecap you to ensure you'll never walk again." The brothers went to work on her, delivering one of the worst beatings she ever received. It was for trying to escape, for screaming, and for triggering the police response. They pulled out clumps of her hair and took turns punching her in the face. They kicked and hit her all over her body until she passed out. 12 years into captivity, Anna was pregnant yet again. Malik beat her every day she wasn't pregnant. He would still rape and beat her anyway. He was just careful not to damage the womb. It was a girl, and Malik named her Rafika. She only got to see her when the nurse named Sally paid a visit. As usual, the baby was sold. As usual, Anna was raped and beaten by Malik every single day, following the baby's birth with the same hostility as before. Eventually, Eshrot did the same. Anna felt herself grow frailer. She developed a cough, which drew green and yellow phlegm from her lungs. A dangerously high fever arose. After a few days, her body began to shut down. A doctor came to the house and informed Malik Anna had pneumonia. She needed to be taken to hospital. Anna woke up in hospital. She thought, "Am I still alive, or have I died? And this is a sort of waiting room before I join Nana in heaven?" As usual, Malik and his family stood guard around the bed. A doctor told Malik that antibiotics had brought the fever down. He said Malik could take her home to rest, as she would likely be very tired for the subsequent 3 months. Malik scowled at the news. As soon as Malik brought Anna home, he brought her into the bedroom and raped her. She was too weak to resist, and he became enraged by it, so he became rougher with her. She still didn't care. She felt that if it killed her, she would be better off because she had nothing to live for. Anna was informed that Asif was getting married in Pakistan, and she would be going with the family to their native land. She was not at all thrilled by the news. She was terrified that she would be sold into a similar life in that country, which would be even worse. In Pakistan, there would be no outside source of intervention and rescue. She heard about women being thrown into wells in Pakistan. The possibilities for suffering were endless, and she had already suffered endlessly. Malik raped her that night because she was on her period, and he loved the sight of her blood. Afterwards, he said to her, "It will be a wonderful trip." He put his arm around her. She felt like she was going to flinch, though she didn't dare risk it. She said, "How long are we going for?" "Oh, I can't remember. About 3 months, I think. Maybe more." Anna came to an important realization. She said, "I can't go. I don't have a passport." "No, that's why we've booked an appointment for you to have your passport photo done at the post office tomorrow. I will take you there myself. I want you to look your best." The next morning, Malik saw to it that Anna be dressed to the height of Pakistani fashion. She had a black eye, so Farhat spread a substance called black coal around both of her eyes to conceal the one with the bruise. When Anna sat on a stool, the postmaster said, "Remove your scarf, please." Malik said, "No, she must keep her scarf on. It is our custom." "I'm afraid it's a rule of the British government. No headwear allowed for passport photos." Malik was annoyed, but he finally said to Anna, "Okay, if that's the rule, take your scarf off your head and keep it around your neck." The passport was approved. To Anna, the prospect of going on that trip was nothing but ominous. The night she saw her finished passport, she whispered to her grandmother, "Please, Nana, please can you come to me? Please hold my hand. I need your love, your help, the warmth of your arms around me." Suddenly her fears dissipated, and she felt her body overtaken with a warm feeling that both healed her body and brought peace to her mind. She heard a reassuring voice. Whether it emanated from her mind or in the room, she wasn't sure. She heard, "I am with you, angel. Our prayers will come true." It was 13 years into her captivity, and she began to devise ways to escape. She knew that going to Pakistan was the worst possible outcome. She could only kill herself. The problem was, the resources to do so were not availed to her. Well, there was one possibility. When she passed the snake tank, it occurred to her that the cobra would likely be venomous. But she was still so scared of it, she didn't dare. She had saved up a large gross of paracetamols. She had about 40 tablets. She didn't know how many she would have to take to overdose, so she decided to stock up on some more. She convinced Soraya that she was in a lot of pain and would need painkillers. It wasn't hard to believe, knowing that Anna was beaten and raped nearly every day for 13 years. She gave Anna a box of 32 pills. Anna thought, that should do it. Anna took what must have amounted to about 70 pills. Before long, she became drowsy. She smiled at the prospect of dying. Anna woke in hospital. Malik had found her unconscious and brought her to the hospital to have her stomach pumped. The doctor told her there was damage to her liver, but it would not be life-threatening. A couple of days later, Malik took her out of the hospital. He left her alone in her room throughout the day, but at night she heard his heavy footfalls coming up the stairs. He said, "You white bitch, how dare you cause such a fucking fuss?" He pulled her off the bed. He kicked her ferociously. "You disgraced our family and wasted all our time. You're nothing but a white whore who must be punished." He pulled her up and smashed her head against the wall. He let her slide down onto a rug. He kicked and punched her some more. He followed up by raping her so brutally she passed out. When she came to, her entire body ached. Bushra persuaded Malik to go easy on Anna. He still raped her, but without the brute violence. At one point he said to Anna, "You must get better to come to Pakistan. No more stupid behavior. You be a good girl now." Anna came up with a new plan. She faked like she was excited to go to Pakistan and attend Asif's wedding to his cousin. Malik was happy that she was looking forward to the occasion. He urged her to start eating again, as her malnourished frame was disturbing to behold. Anna had been approved for social assistance to benefit her children, the ones who were sold off to other couples. Typically, Malik and his relatives would accompany her to the post office. This was phase 1 of her plan to escape. When she signed the paperwork to receive her most recent allowance, she slipped a scrap of paper to the man. She whispered, "Please, could you call the health center and ask for the health visitor to ring me and arrange to visit my youngest child? Tell them it's urgent." She passed the paper to him from under her sleeve. She said, "Here is the phone number. Please do it today. It is very urgent." He nodded discreetly, and that was the end of their exchange. Later that day, there was a phone call. Malik answered, and he looked annoyed. He walked over to Anna and said, "It's the health visitor. I tried to put her off, told her we don't have time for a visit now, but she said it was already late and she had to come. She said she couldn't arrange it with me. She has to speak to you. Tell her we can't see her." Anna stood. Sadness trickled in as she realized her plan wasn't working. But then Malik said, "Or if she must come, tell her to come this week." Anna picked up the phone. "Hello? Hi, Anna, it's Sally here, your health visitor. I've just had a phone call from your local post office. You said you needed me to call you urgently about Rafika. Has something happened to her?" "Not that I know of." After a silence, Sally said, Shall I come for my 6-month visit? Yes, please, but Malik says you can only come if you can fit us in this week. Okay, I'll juggle a couple of appointments around. What about tomorrow afternoon at 2? Will that be soon enough? Let me just check with Malik. Anna turned to Malik. He scowled, but nodded. She said, Tomorrow afternoon at 2? Anna said to Sally, Yes, that's fine. Thanks. See you tomorrow. Anna was thrilled by the prospect of seeing Rafika again. Malik said, What did you mean when you said, not that you knew of? Anna said, Oh, that was when she asked me if the health center had been in touch to arrange a visit. I said that because I didn't know. Malik said, Well, you better watch what you say tomorrow. Remember, leave all the talking to me. She said, Yes. The next day, after Sally examined the baby, Anna looked down and let her sleeve fall loosely. She shook it, and a folded piece of paper fell to the floor. While Sally wrote something down on her notebook, Anna nudged her knee with Sally's ever so slightly. Sally picked up the paper and put it in her pocket. That night, Malik punished Anna for holding Rafika as much as she did by beating and raping her. Anna coped by remembering that Sally read the message that began with, Help me. She hoped she would take it seriously and act. The next day at noon, the telephone rang. Malik answered. He said, I can tell you all that information better than Anna can, so ask me your questions. He finally relented and shrugged and called Anna to the phone. He said, The white bitch won't talk to me. Anna said, Who is it? The health visitor. She says she can only speak to you. He was so outraged he nearly threw the receiver at Anna. He stormed off to the other side of the room. Anna said into the handset, Hello? Sally, I've told Malik that I need you to check the details of all your children's births and the spelling of their names. Is that okay? Anna, yes. Sally, good. Now, I want you to answer my real questions. Are you in trouble? Anna, yes. Sally, do you need help? Anna, yes. Sally, are you able to get out? Anna, no. Sally, have you still got my mobile phone number? Anna, yes, that's right. Sally, well, that's in case you need to get in touch with me. Are you able to use the phone when you want to? Anna, no, I'm afraid that's not correct. Sally, but you will if ever you get the chance? Anna, yes, that's better. Sally, now this date you've given me, 21st of April, is that the date you need me to help you? Anna, yes. Sally, do you need me to come and collect you? Anna, yes. Sally, I realize you can't say much, and you won't be able to answer the phone, but I will give 2 rings on the landline number at your house when I arrive on your street. Will that be all right? Anna, yes, that's fine. Sally, good. I will rearrange all my appointments and take the day off. So I will be sitting in a black car near the cakes factory down your road all day until you can get free, okay? Anna, yes, thank you. Anna wanted to tell her more, but she knew better with Malik nearby. Anna said goodbye to Sally. Malik said, Did you help her get it all sorted out? Anna said yes. She'd got most of it right already. He seemed satisfied with this answer. Anna was counting down the days until her rescue. She felt happier, stronger, and healthier than she had in a long time. Even Malik took notice of it. He said to her one day, You look happy. I like to see you happy. It was an unexpected sentiment from the man who got off on watching her cry and bleed. She lied, saying, Yes, it's all the talk of Pakistan. He seemed to believe her. The 21st of April came. Anna was terrified that nothing would happen. Anna was brought down to the living room to celebrate the last day of Ramadan with the family. At one point, the telephone rang twice, then stopped. Asif was about to answer, but stopped short. He was puzzled. Nobody else noticed it but Anna. She thought of Sally on the other end of the line. A few minutes later, the family engaged in prayers, with Anna being forced to go along. At one point, Anna told Bushra she needed to use the toilet. Miraculously, nobody accompanied her to the bathroom. Knowing that freedom awaited, Anna went to the back door by the kitchen. It was left unlocked with the key still in it. She went to the bathroom to flush the toilet as a ruse. She went back to the kitchen door and ran outside. She thought, "Can it be true? Am I free at last?" Anna ran down the street until she saw a parked car. It was black. She ran up to it, despite being listless from illness and malnutrition. Sally opened the passenger door. She said, "Well done, you made it." She handed Anna a disguise consisting of a large hat with a floppy brim, a thick scarf, and large sunglasses. Sally said, "Put these on in case they chase after us, and keep your head down. Now I've got to get you right away from here." As Sally drove off, Anna was tempted to look back and see if Malik and his clan were chasing after them, but she didn't dare to. Halfway across town, the gravity of the situation finally kicked in. She was free. She thought, could it be true? After 13 years of hell, am I really free at last? Sally said, "Are you all right? How do you feel?" "I feel great. Free at last. Thanks to your help." "Where do you want me to take you?" "I don't know. I've got nowhere to go." "Okay, you can stay at my place tonight if you want." Anna, "Yes, please." Sally, "We can talk properly later. But do you mind if I ask you a couple of things that puzzled me about your help note and our phone conversation the other day?" Anna, "Go ahead." Sally, "Were you a prisoner?" Anna, "Yes. Malik kidnapped me when I was a few days past my 15th birthday, and I've never had a birthday since. So he was a pedophile. He held me captive for 13 horrendous years." Sally turned to her. She looked shocked. It was the first time in 13 years that anybody reacted to her situation in any way that didn't suggest it was all her fault. Sally, "And where is Rafika and the other children? Could you not have brought them with you?" Anna, "No, they weren't mine to bring." Sally was astonished. "But you had Rafika with you when I came last week." Anna, "It was all a charade." Anna told Sally about Malik's baby trafficking operation. She wept as she did so. She said, "As long as I live, I don't expect I'll ever see them again." Sally said, "That's appalling. So cruel. I had no idea." After a few minutes of silence, Anna said, "I can't tell you most of what happened." Sally said, "You've had an appalling life with them by the sound of it, but none of it was your fault. And you're free now." Though she was touched by Sally's kindness, she still felt shame. At Sally's home, she said to Anna, "Will you be all right sleeping on the sofa tonight?" "Yes, it looks a really comfortable one, not like the hard settees at the house." They sat at the kitchen table for a cup of tea. Anna, "Thank you for helping me to escape. I couldn't have done it without you." Sally, "I only wish I'd realized earlier. What puzzles me is, didn't anyone come looking for you? What about your family? Didn't they report you as missing?" Anna, "I don't think anyone realized. None of them wanted me, and I had to run away." Sally asked her what she would like to eat, but Anna said she wasn't hungry. Sally, "Is that why you're so thin?" Anna, "Partly, but mostly I think I was very depressed. I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to stay alive. Sally, depression can be very harmful to physical health as well as the mind. But you are extremely skinny, almost like a skeleton. I've got some scales in the bathroom. Do you mind if we check how much you weigh? At the age of 28, Anna weighed 84 pounds. Sally took Anna to a doctor, who prescribed medicine to help her regain her appetite and gain weight. Sally offered to take her to a market and buy her some real clothes. Anna was too terrified to go, fearing that Malik or one of his relatives might be there. She chose to stay at Sally's home alone. The next day, Sally discussed with Anna what would be the next phase of her plan. Sally, we ought to go to the police. Anna, I suppose so, but please not today. Sally, okay, but we must go soon. Sally insisted they contact relatives. She felt they must be assured that she was still alive. Anna, my mother hates me, and my father is violent and abusive, so I don't want anything to do with him. It was technically against the rules for Sally to have Anna in her house, as it might have been misconstrued as endemic to a personal relationship. Anna conceded that her grandparents might take her in, but she was far from sure. Anna wound up at her grandmother's funeral. Her uncle Steve said to her, "Oh, you've turned up now, have you? Where were you when she needed you? You were her only granddaughter. All the rest were boys. She wanted to see you before she died, but oh no, you couldn't even do that for her." Anna was dying to tell him the truth about her situation during those 13 years. She figured he might not believe her anyway. He was relentless. Look at that body now. That was your grandmother, the woman who doted on you and Nana in her house for 2 years. She never saw or heard from you again. You've been in here and you've seen her body now. I want her to haunt you for the rest of your days. It's your fault she's lying there, after all she did for you. Anna was so accustomed to being blamed for things that weren't her fault, she stood at her grandmother's coffin and apologized. Sally played back a voicemail that was left for her at home. "Hi Sally, it's Mike here. I was hoping to catch you in. I'm sorry to disturb your weekend, but I've had an urgent call from the police. They've put out an alert looking for one of your patients who's gone AWOL, so I thought I'd better ring to see if you might know anything. Her name is Anna Ruston, and apparently she's been reported as a missing person. She went out yesterday and didn't return. Her husband has told the police he's very worried about her because she has severe mental health problems and unpredictable behavior. He said she's unstable and a danger to herself and others. She needs to be found and taken back to safety. Ring me on this number if you hear anything. Bye." Sally, "Well, what do you think of that?" Anna, "It's a pack of lies. How dare he?" Sally, "Yes, though it wouldn't be at all surprised if your traumas hadn't given you a degree of mental health problems. It would be the same for anyone in that situation. But you certainly don't match his description of you. And is he your husband?" Anna, "No. He told the hospital as well that he was my husband, and at the time I was underage, so he couldn't have married me without my parents' permission. Could he?" Sally, "You're right. Anyway, even if he was your husband, you would still have the right to leave him if you wanted to, like anyone else." Anna would have to talk to the police soon, otherwise it would sound suspicious. She would also need to make plans about where she would go. The prospect was frightening because she knew that even if Malik and his brothers went to prison, the women in the family and the younger males would likely keep a lookout for her. Sally took Anna to her mother's house. Her mother wasn't thrilled to see her, but let her in. Anna told her about the situation with Malik. Her mother reacted with a poker face. Anna couldn't even tell if she believed her. About an hour after she arrived, Malik's taxi pulled up outside. The police must have told him where Anna was. Not only did Malik get out, but Eshrat, Farhat, Bushra, Soraya, and the children. It was like a clown car full of evil fucks. They all stood on Anna's mother's doorstep, ordering Anna to get in the car. Her mother went to the door and stood her ground, but Malik pushed his way in. He was followed by the rest of the family. Anna wanted to hide, but she knew it would be pointless. She felt she was doomed. She anticipated more captivity and torment for the rest of her days. She froze and trembled. Malik shouted curses at her in Punjabi. He said, "You're mine, and I'm not leaving without you. So get a move on. Get into that fucking taxi and get back where you should be. You're a disgrace to the family." Anna stood her ground for once. She shook her head. He raised his hand to strike her. She flinched. Her mother intervened. She said, "You touch her and I'll call the police. I'll have you for assault." This was the first time in Anna's life that her mother acted like she cared about her. Feeling stronger than ever with this support, Anna said, "Get out of this house. I'm not coming back, and I never want to see you again." He was angry, but her mother said, "Out! You heard her. There's the door. Get out, all of you. Go to hell." Before Malik left, he said to Anna, "If you ever leave this house, I'll have you kneecapped." Anna discovered her mother had been dating a police officer. Anna shared with him as many details about her years under Malik's roof as she was able. The police wanted to prosecute Malik, but Anna wanted to regain her strength physically and psychologically first. In the meantime, the police guarded the house with patrols 24/7. Sally's employment was terminated because she had Anna in her house and used her own resources to help her. Anna felt guilty, feeling it was her fault. Anna's relationship with her mother didn't thaw completely, but her mother finally told her the reason she hated her. Anna was conceived through rape. Eventually they went their separate ways again, to the point where when Anna saw her for the last time, her mother didn't even acknowledge recognition. 5 days after Anna's escape, there was a visitor at the door, someone unexpected. It was a boy named Jamie, with whom she had fallen in love shortly before being kidnapped by Malik. She had his picture with her throughout all those years. She concealed it underneath a floorboard. Anna could never bring herself to prosecute Malik and his brothers. The stress of being in the courtroom with them and dealing with their threats would have been overwhelming. She was also uncomfortable with the prospect of talking about the rapes in detail in front of a crowded room. The other problem is that when it comes to charges involving rape and domestic violence, the victim is also on trial, with the defense attorney cross-examining them and trying to cast doubt on their credibility. Malik was frequently involved in violent attacks and fights amid his dealing of drugs. He would serve time in prison for years due to these crimes. He'd even stabbed a relative. Anna changed her name legally. She married Jamie and had 4 children with him. She suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder and physical illnesses related to the rapes and beatings. She still has nightmares that she is re-experiencing the abuse. Jamie has told her that she sometimes speaks Punjabi during these dreams. The dreams are vivid, and she can feel Malik punching and kicking her and pulling her hair. She was, however, relieved that being forced into Islamic customs didn't make her a Muslim. She was also pleased to find out that she wasn't considered Malik's wife from a legal standpoint. Malik sent a legal document through a lawyer, asking her to absolve her parental rights to the children he raped into her. It was the only way to completely bar him from her life, but it was not easy signing the documents, knowing there was no way she would ever see those children again. Whenever Anna has another one of her nightmares about being back in that bedroom in Malik's house, she goes downstairs afterwards and confirms that she can still open the front door to the outside world. As she puts it, "Freedom is a precious gift to me, and I treasure it alongside my beloved family." The following is an op-ed piece that was written by British journalist Faiza Iqbal. Sex rings, pedophilia, preying on white women. What is wrong with British Pakistani men? I am sick and tired of what the British Pakistani society has become. I really am. In recent news, it has been reported that the largest British gang of pedophiles preying on young, vulnerable white girls is of Pakistani descent. There is no need to sugarcoat the fact that we clearly have an issue with women in our society. Telford, where this particular gang operated, was a town not too far from my own, in Ironbridge. Telford was a sleepy town I happened to visit in 1999 as part of a school trip, of which I have many fond memories. Fast forward 20 years, the town has now become associated with gang rape, pedophilia, forced prostitution, and rampant abuse. Since the 80s, over 1,000 children may have been victims of abuse. Girls as young as 11 were tied up, beaten, and raped, with some men paying up to £2,000, depending upon the age of the victim. The younger the victim, the higher the price. There is absolutely no way one can defend the actions of these despicable men, or even allege that only a small portion was involved in such abhorrent acts. Over the years, statistics show that 84% of those convicted from grooming gangs for sexual crimes were Asian men, mostly of Pakistani heritage. Far-right groups such as the British National Party and the English Defence League have raised the issue of grooming gangs operating in major towns for years, but no one really paid attention. It is only recently, after detailed investigations were called for, that this is being acknowledged as an immensely serious issue. As Pakistanis, we have to ask ourselves about the overall stamp of shame we have left behind in a country that has been gracious and welcoming to us from the start. We need to rid ourselves of this colonial revenge mindset, which sees white women as an easy means to perhaps seek revenge for the misdemeanors of their ancestors. For years, I have been defending the Pakistani community against repressive hatred and racist prejudice. But when such instances keep occurring, it becomes impossible to continue this defense. We have to address the elephant in the room and question, do all Pakistani men hate women, even after they leave the country? After all, they do regard them as their property, for them to do with as they please, while also believing a woman's place to be solely in the kitchen or the bedroom. From a young age, we have been socially conditioned to tie a woman's worth to her marital status and the number of children she bears. Young brown women are still told to make themselves more rishta, worthy to men, whilst at the same time we make no such demands for our men to reform the odious acts they indulge in. We tightly guard our women's virginity and basically require them to stay indoors before marriage, not wanting them to engage in anything that damages their hymen or get them blacklisted as promiscuous. All the while, our men are free to do whatever they want, be it legitimate or otherwise, without fear, denigration, or shameful retort. The reason those young, vulnerable white women were let down in this manner is because our men have repeatedly been allowed to get away with this kind of behavior. What seems to be the reason behind our men continually committing acts of such depravity? Perhaps it has something to do with the intense sexual frustration they experience whilst living in a conservative community in a hypersexualized country. While maintaining propriety and decorum in public, they end up leading disturbing lives in private. Since talking about sex is also a taboo in our communities, they ultimately end up resorting to clandestine, illegal, and inhumane ways to fulfill their sexual desires. We need to realize that whilst the desire to have sex or being sexual is nothing to be ashamed of, exploiting vulnerable young girls, many of whom are from broken homes, is most definitely a shameful and heinous act no one should engage in. If sexual crimes are to be brought down, we need to start with honest and more open communication in our communities about sex. An investigation is now being demanded, and hopefully something good will come out of it. But this does not absolve the British Pakistani community from taking responsibility. We are not blameless. We need to start paying more attention to our boys and men and be more aware of the activities they engage in. On the other hand, we must also get rid of the archaic beliefs where we impose purity, virtue, and perfection on our women, while our men go out and ravage the world. The idea that white women are somehow to blame for this, that they are promiscuous or in any way asking for it, must be destroyed permanently. What we need is the spotlight to come off of all women and be focused on our men. Yes, rape and child abuse are issues emerging everywhere across the globe, but this issue pertains to a single community. And just because a crime is common doesn't mean the community has not normalized problematic behavior and repeatedly condoned such actions. I don't want to hear further about Pakistani grooming gangs. I don't want to hear about young white girls being raped by old perverted men who find it impossible to control their sexual urges. I don't want the families of these criminals to displace the blame from the men to the white women just because they are not ready to deal with reality. And more importantly, in these difficult times, I don't want our entire community, which largely consists of valued professionals, to be besmirched by the actions of these gangs. I don't want this to become the face that represents us. But, unfortunately, until we tackle the root of the problem, it seems like the entire community will have to face the wrath for the actions of a few. Thank you for listening to Human Monsters. Bye for now.